Hello, hello, are we live? Hello, hello. How's it going, everybody? It's Friday. We're starting a little bit early today, surprisingly. Surprisingly, I'm trying to fiddle around with this other chat box thing. Let's see. Didn't I drop that? Control V. No, that didn't work. Okay. It still feels like there's a delay in my voice. Oh, what the fuck ever. Whatever. Boop. If it's a delay, like, you blame yourself. Well, you should. Joking. I think there's a way to figure it out. Maybe like this? Is this better or worse? Better or worse? Worse or better? Better or worse? I could fiddle with settings all day. I really could. I really could. But hopefully things are going just fine, and there's not too much delay going on right now. I wanted to try this other chat real quick. I don't know. I think I gave up on it before because it wasn't showing like custom emojis. But pretty sure it can. Custom code. Clean. Wasn't there like a place to put background color? Let's see, try transparent. I want a transparent. I want to chat with a transparent background. That's what I'm complaining about. So I don't know if this one will work. Let's see. Chat box. I never seem to just get this to work. Refresh the cache. Alright, does that work? No, nothing works. Somebody type things. Type things, damn it. Everybody type things. It does work. Okay. There we go. See, I would like to have this other chat box with the transparent background. But we'll see how that works. Oh, might be a little too big. Let's see, show platform icons? Is that what does that mean? It just means like the platform. See, I like this, but like my thing is if you do a custom emoji, I don't think that shows up. Will somebody just like spam some custom emojis real quick? Yeah, see, it just says the name of them, and I think that's why I went to the other thing. Yeah, it just says the name of the icon, which sucks because like I need to figure out how to make like a custom chat thing. I don't know why it won't show custom emojis. That's pretty extra emotes. I don't know any of these things. See, some of this is like language towards like Twitch, and I'm not a Twitch streamer. Oh well. We'll have to figure that out in the future. It's just the only downer is that like you don't see like I said, like custom emojis. But that's only like displayed when we're like looking at stuff. So do we really need to see that when we're looking at stuff like that? It looks kind of weird. Well, I'll tell you why I want like a background. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to do with like my screen capture. Oops, not that. I'm trying to make this like full screen like that. So that's what I'm trying to do. I don't know. What do y'all think? Yay? Nay? Don't give a crap? Hey, Cassie. We got a moderator in the house. There's room for custom code, but it doesn't really do much for me. Hmm. 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 We'll try it. I could also just shorten the chat box, I just realized. If I just do that. I'll have to fiddle with that. Like that. So, like, I want that, but not with the whole thing translucent, if you get what I mean. Which I can't do at the moment, because technically it's like a screen capture. So all I can do is, like, put a transparency filter on it, which doesn't do the thing I want it to do. Color correction. Wait, there isn't a filter on that? It says there's a filter on that. Oh, right. Duh. Yo, why am I sweating right now? Anyways, hello everybody. Hey, Cassidy. Hey, Mistress Angelica. Tyler. Brent, good to see you. I know I'm starting really early today. I don't know how that's going to go. You can start early, but does everybody come early? No, they don't get the memo. Why? Because I didn't send one. I have a quarter of a jug of root beer. And that's all I got for the night. So we're gonna watch like a really big, like 3 hour thing tonight. I don't know if we're gonna get through the whole thing. If we don't, I may entertain a second live stream tomorrow to finish it. We'll see how it goes and how we feel. But it's a really philosophical like topic with actually it's like a ton of philosophical topics combined in one. And I've only seen the first like hour and 10 minutes of it where I'm like, no, this is going to be good for like stream stuff. There's a lot of talking points that we could take out or talk about Neogenian concepts. Like a lot of moments like that. So that's what I want to do. And there was plenty of other like topics to talk about that was going on in the world today. Like there's the state of the United State of the fucking address thing last night, and you know, with Biden speaking, which was funny. There's other things that are going on, but I'm like, I really just want to like sit back and just like be a philosophy nerd today. So today's kind of like one of those days at school where the teacher just wheels in the TV and the VCR player and we just watch like some educational show. So, but you do have to take notes, and I will be grading you on notes. No, I'm joking. But it is like more of like a sit back and relax and have a conversation. So yeah, we will be watching Contrapoints today, which is perfect. It's International Women's Day. And Natalie is a very intelligent woman, so what a great way to celebrate. And shout out to all the ladies in the chat. The heck? This is sex symbol. I'm sweating because I'm a sex symbol. I don't know about that. I will be again soon. Spending a lot of time at the gym, which has really been working out for me, so slowly but surely, slowly we turn. Step by step, slowly we turn. Hey, Ren! Thank you so much for gifting a membership. We're just waiting a little bit for people to get in. Also, I think I'm going to spend the weekend and completely rearrange this setup. Like, everything you see behind me. And Cassie got the membership! Congratulations, Cassie. I think I want to turn my desk around and face the other side of the room. And seriously, because I'm tired of having to make my bed behind us. Because if I just leave all my blankets and shit on it, it looks like I have a messy room. And so I'm really tired of like taking off, like dealing with the bed stuff. Like, because I like how my bed how it is when I sleep in it. Okay, it's set up for sleeping, not for looking at or not for aesthetics. So I'm like, I really just want to like change my whole room. Another reasoning I was thinking of is the whiteboard behind me. I mean, it's like a really big whiteboard, and I would like to use it for live stream stuff, but it's way over there. So anything I write on it, it's like pretty much impossible to see. So I'm like, if I like kind of switch things around, pull that off the closet door, mount it to like the wall behind, then I can have a whiteboard behind, like directly behind me. And that's what I'm thinking of doing. But I'm not sure, because that's a lot of work. Plus, it puts my desk floating in the middle of my room. And I like it open space like this, but also I never use this space, so what am I complaining about? Literally just like the vibe of the room when I should just be making it functional. It's just a place to stream and sleep. If I'm doing anything else, I'm hanging out in my living room. So we'll see. That's not for you all to decide or persuade me on. That's just what I'm thinking. So might have a completely different setup by might look very different behind me, I guess. How exciting. One day you'll have a loppy of your own. I hope you do. I will be making loppy lumps again. Yes, I am working on those. I have to keep you guessing. Exactly. I mean, I like how it looks behind here just fine. I mean, it's not really anything special. But yeah, if I leave all my bedding and stuff on there, then it is noticeable. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. And I can't really use the whiteboard. So anyways, we'll wait like 5 or 10 more minutes and then we'll get started on this because this is a long-ass video we're going to be watching. And there's going to be a lot of pausing and conversation and things like that. So, you know, if you want to watch the video uninterrupted, then probably just skip out on the stream and watch the video directly. But it's been out for a while. I really wanted to watch the rest of it. I put it on while I was laying in bed, and I ended up falling asleep to it. Like, I was thinking, like, maybe an hour into it, maybe a little bit more. Because when I woke up, like, the whole thing had played through to the end, and I'm like, I did not, like, see 2/3 of that. Ren has 3 lumps, and you need a big one. I don't have the big ones anymore. I think they ended up getting ruined or something spilt on them, like the big pom-pom balls I had. But I have tons of small ones. I actually need to get more supplies. Hey, Lucifer. I guess I could pull up the video while we're sitting here. Nice thing about just, like, reacting to a video is, like, I don't have a whole bunch of links up. Lucifer says, hey everyone, I made it to Morg's stream yesterday. Or Morg's stream yesterday was wild and the comments are wild. Yeah, the comment yesterday was crazy. I don't know. Sometimes people are just like so crazy in the chat, I just ban them. Without even like saying anything. There was a couple of that. Like I try, like I guess I'm just like I don't care to try anymore because it's just like I'm like, hey, please don't do this, and then people get defensive, like, oh, what do you mean don't do this? Well, I'm not doing anything, and then it's like a whole conversation about what it is they think they're doing versus what I think they're doing, and then it's just now I'm just like, you know what, just delete. There's gonna be so many people that come and go. Like, who gives a shit? First few times moderating, I was just like, I need to be nice, I need to be this or that. Well, the stupid thing about being a moderator is, like, if you do justly, like, ban somebody or, like, time somebody out, then, like, other people will be like, you're a Nazi or whatever, like, You're trying to control us all. It's like nobody cares about anybody who is a moderator does not care about that shit. Nobody cares about really over a chat on YouTube. Really, the whole demonstration of my will and power over other people is going to be on a YouTube chat. Are you fucking kidding me? That's what a customer service job is for. Like, I just really don't care. Like, a chat room is the town hall, or like the town square, you know? People are like, oh, you're ruining my freedom of speech on a YouTube channel? Really? This is where you need to speak freely? Go make your own channel. That's what I say to those people. What am I complaining about? Anyways, I got sidetracked. Butterfingers. You need to do a candy tier port. Do it. It's not about brainwash people. I don't know. I like to see the best in everyone, but sometimes I'm like, damn, that person's dumb. It's also really distracting because I have like lots of screens, so like there'll be like Morg on one screen, the chat on the other, and then I'm like over here like doing something, and then like I'll look over and I'm like, what? And then I'll like ban somebody crazy, and then I'll go back over. Who's texting me? Philip. Yeah, it was pretty hectic in the chat yesterday. Felipe Chupe. That was so funny. Felipe Chupe. You are now Felipe Chupe. Maybe if we say his name 3 times, he'll appear in the chat. I need to check my laundry soon. I cannot let that... I'm going to do that now. I'm going to go check my laundry. Take 5. Are we ready to lock in? We need to get started. It's 5 o'clock. This thing is going to be forever. So, this is Contrapoints, our lovely philosophy gal. She is starting off in this one talking about the book series Twilight. We all know that, like the infamous vampire book series Twilight. And so she talks about how she spent time reading the books. And then, you know, there's this whole thing, like, do the books suck? Like, do the movies suck? Like, is this a shitty story? Like, and some people really love it. And, like, and so for the beginning intro, she's like, you know, just talking about it, and she's like, you know, talk about this, that, and she's like, oh, you know, am I saying that these books are good? Yes. So she's making an argument for why the books are actually good, and not necessarily like the best thing in the world, but why it's actually a good story, and why it actually has a lot of deep-rooted archetypes within humanity's subconscious. So we're going to be talking about tons of archetypal stuff, and emotions and passions and drives, like love, romance, lust, eroticism, death, pain, um, sadism, masochism, bondage, relationships, opposite sort of opposite things, like taking and giving, and just like all these different like philosophical concepts within stories about love. So this is going to be a really philosophically deep thing. So everybody needs to lock in. So if you all need to grab some drinks and snacks, I would do it right now, because you're going to want to get comfy and cozy. And hopefully we can finish the whole thing tonight. If not, at least wrap it up to where we're comfortable with it. And I guess worst case scenario, I could maybe go live tomorrow to finish things. If people join for part 2, that might be kind of fun. I don't know. I'm really iffy on that. So yes, everybody get your drinks. Everybody get your snacks. There might be a possibility for part 2 tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see. Because I typically don't like to live stream more than 3 hours. However, this is a 2 hour and 52, almost 53 minutes, so almost 3 hour video. So just watching the video like straight through is a long time, and probably just as long as I would stream normally. But the thing is like, we're constantly going to be pausing it and talking about things and making comments and commentary and analyzing things from a Neogenian perspective. So that 3 hours is going to stretch out quite a bit. And if there's where it's due, we can skip through things or skim through things. But there's so much like great information and like things to learn. It's a little hard to do that. So we will see how this goes. How about that? We'll start it out and we'll see how we feel. After about 2.5 hours, I think that's when we're going to start deciding, all right, do we try to just like ditch it? Do we get the point? Do we, or do we do a 2-parter? We'll see. Brent says the writing on Twilight was actually a little better than 50 Shades of Grey. 50 Shades of Grey is mentioned in this too. It's really interesting because like I'm a person who's like a big hater I am a big hater of Twilight. I'm like, this is so stupid and stuff. But after this, I'm not, at least what I've seen, I'm not exactly convinced I should like it, but I'm really intrigued by how perhaps it doesn't quite suck fully. Probably not my cup of tea, but we'll see. All right. In 4 minutes, we're starting it. So everybody get your shit. Hurry, hurry, hurry. You have just a few little bit of time. I don't have snacks today. I just have this leftover root beer. I don't even have a glass for it. I don't have snacks. I just have root beer, Moppy, plenty of weed, but we're not trying to get stoned, so there you go, Spectral. I know, I normally start like closer to like 6 o'clock, so that's why I'm like, was it a good idea to start early, or should I have just like started at the normal time? Your riding crop and your handcuffs. All right, we got 2 minutes. We shall not waste time. I was skipping around at the subjects earlier, thinking, like, do I really want to show this? Let's see. I think we've watched Contra before, haven't we? Didn't we watch her last one? Yeah, I think we did, on her huge piece about J.K. Rowling. I don't know why I forgot her name for a minute. That's so funny. Plus, I just did a short video about J.K. Rowling from yesterday. Yeah, we did watch. Only that one was like an hour and 55 minutes. Okay, well, so take that video and add an extra hour on it. I think we did. Did we watch the Envy one? I don't know if we did it together, but I did watch it, and that one's fucking fabulous as well. Oh, this one was the one on J.K. Rowling. I don't think we watched that one. Oh, this was another one, right. God, that was like 10 months ago. Contrapoints, she releases maybe like 2 videos a year. But there's each video she does is just so thorough in just research and information. Like, I mean, it's essentially, it's like a class, like you're sitting down for a class, only it's actually interesting. Oh, remember to like the video or live stream and this video. Please like the live stream. I see 15 of you and only 8 likes. Some of you should be feeling really guilty and put on the spot right now. Like it, like it, like it. 1 like equals 1 spank. Spank me. No, I'm not. I don't want to be creepy. Like, spank the like button. Don't spank me. The like button is naughty. It needs to be spanked. Spank it. Spank it. I love how whenever I call out people, like, because I can see how many viewers versus how many likes. And I love it, like, when I call out people, like, you'll see, like, 2 or 3 people drop out. like they're just like, fuck, gotta get out. I love putting you on the spot, all right? Like it or leave. Hey, Nico Peters. You just become number 9. Love potion number 9. Boot. Alright, we've got a rational support unicorn. Drop some, let's see. I have been thinking about a new emoji. I'm up for some ideas. I really want to do a dunce cap for some reason, because I feel like we need an emoji to throw at people we don't like or think are stupid. So it's, I don't know. Thinking of a dunce cap or something like that. But I am open to suggestions. Usually, I don't know, I think emojis need to be based off of like inside jokes and things like that for us. I probably am going to get rid of the lemon one. Did I already get rid of the lemon one? Listen to me, I'm like, we're going to start, and then I start yapping again. No, we didn't get rid of, no, we still have the lemon one. It's not really relevant anymore, so I might get rid of that one. No mint, that's a possibility, but that's almost too niche. I don't know. I guess the rose isn't relevant anymore, but I love pink roses. They're my favorite flower ever. The disco ball, I mean, originally I put the disco ball up there because there was no disco ball emoji, but there is a disco ball emoji. So I feel like it's sort of reductive at that point, you know what I mean? Like, So actually, I might do that. I might get rid of the lemon and the disco ball. I'm keeping the snakes. I'm keeping the Zeta. I might... I don't know. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Anyways. Where is my mind? I guess we could just start with those two. Yeah. So I'm going to get rid of the disco ball simply because there's already a disco ball emoji now. And then I'm going to get rid of the lemon because that's no longer relevant. We'll sit on the others and we'll just like create two. One, I definitely want to do a dunce cap. Two, it's probably going to be no mint. All right. Drop some snakes in the chat if you want to get started. Let's get the snaker doodles going. Some more snakes. We need more snakes. More snakes! Hold on, I'm trying to get everything set up. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Pull that down a little bit more. There we go. That should be okay. We should be good, right? That's all the other... This is how all the other cool streamy people do it. Like that, without all that space. That's a verb. Yeah, the original snake emoji next to like the one I did looks so goofy. I mean, it's relevant. I'm not saying you should feel bad for doing it. It's just, I mean, it's so funny. It's so cartoony. All right, lock in chat. Let's go. Eyes and ears up front.
So, I've been reading the Twilight Saga, a series of vampire romance novels by someone called Stephanie Meyer, and I have, just a couple thoughts. I know a lot has been said about Twilight, but this is a complex work. There's depths to Twilight that we as a society haven't even begun to explore. So let's get into it. Most of you know what Twilight is, but I should explain the basics for new people. Stephanie Meyer was, by all accounts, a bored Mormon housewife when, on June 2nd, 2003, around 4 in the morning, she awoke from a vivid dream about a girl and a boy in a meadow having this conversation about how they were in love and the difficulties in that because he wanted to kill her. He was a vampire.
A boy and a girl in a meadow having this.
Oh, sorry, we need captions. I did read the first Twilight book. I didn't think the book was bad. But when they came out with the movie and it started hitting like mainstream, I'm like, this is too much. And I fell out of it. I don't know. But I do get the appeal, you know? I get the appeal. I just... the reading wasn't that difficult, and I don't mean to like that's no shade to Stephanie Meyer, but like it really like it was really simple, so it really was palatable to like teenagers. So yeah, I thought it was interesting, at least on that part. But Stephanie Meyer being like a bored Mormon housewife is true. It's really funny. She totally is Mormon.
This conversation about how they were in love and the difficulties in that because he wanted to kill her. He was a vampire.
That dream became the first of 4 novels, Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and Breaking Dawn, which were made into 5 films. In 2015, Stephanie published Life and Death, a gender-swapped reimagining of the first novel. Yes, she
Yeah, see, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize she wrote the same novel over again, but reversed the gender roles. Interesting. She transgendered Twilight. Yeah, she did, I guess.
Transgendered Twilight. Twilight has gone woke. And in 2020, she published Midnight Sun, which is just the first novel again, but from Dracula's perspective.
Dracula.
Twilight has been on trend again recently. I mean, I'm talking about it, so... Honestly, it was more on trend when I started this video, but the script took me 18 months.
Twilight took me 3 months to write.
So, in the 2000s, these books about a teenage girl being seduced by various creatures of the night spent 235 weeks on the bestseller list for children, and, as you can imagine, there was discourse.
Vampires need love too. That is world news for this Sunday. I'm John Berman. For all of us at ABC News, thanks for watching. Good night.
Twilight's one of those pop culture phenomena from the 2000s that was intensely loved and then intensely hated, and then 10 years later it got reevaluated and everyone's like, do we really need to hate this thing so much? You know, like gay people, or 9/11. Some critics have suggested that Twilight was hated so much because of misogyny. And that's definitely true. You know, people love to hate whatever teenage girls are into. I remember when Twilight came out, boys really hated that Stephanie Meyer had feminized vampire lore by making Edward sparkle, you know, because Count Dracula was always so butch.
Perhaps you should grow a beard.
And yet, the truly
forgot about
devoted
that movie.
Twilight haters have always been women. Twilight is a romance novel, and as long as romance novels have existed, women have always been the majority of readers, but also the harshest critics. Hating on romance novels is as much a part of feminine culture as reading them. In 1856, yes, video essays are pretentious. Yes, it's very funny. Let's all laugh. In 1856,
I ain't
Mary Ann
laughing.
Evans, known by her masculine pen name,
I love essay videos. I have in mind, I imagine, and I have fantasies where I make essay videos like this, but I'm like, they are so much fucking work. And that's why it hasn't happened yet. Because I haven't committed to the work yet. Perhaps I will.
George Eliot, and often considered one of the greatest novelists of all time, wrote an essay called Silly Novels by Lady Novelists, in which she complained that lady novelists write unrealistic, wish-fulfillment fantasy schlock with absurd Mary Sue self-insert protagonists who every man falls in love with. You know, all the same complaints that people make today about romance fiction. It is clear that they write in elegant boudoirs with violet-colored ink and a ruby pen, that they must be entirely indifferent to publishers' accounts and inexperienced in every form of poverty except poverty of brains. There is a level of
Sorry, I keep trying to, like, move this around. It's just so in the way. I guess that works. No. Here we go. Background color, black, opacity. Okay, window color. Wait, where's the font size? I just want to make the font size just a little smaller. There we go. Alright, fine. I'll stop fussing. I promise!
of internalized misogyny in this, the not like other girls urge to identify with men and share in men's contempt for women. That is misogyny. But to simply dismiss hatred of Twilight as misogynistic is too simple, because the criticism is usually not just that Twilight is feminine and frivolous, that it's written with violet-colored ink and a ruby pen, but also that vampire romance intertwines love and violence.
Here was this guy, and he was in love with her, but he wanted to kill her.
And that Twilight is therefore somehow dangerous. Is this true? Is Twilight dangerous? Well, Edward Cullen is the world's most dangerous predator.
I'm the world's most dangerous predator.
He's a killer.
I'm a killer.
He's killed people before.
I've killed people before.
He wanted to kill you.
I wanted to kill you.
He still don't know if I can control himself.
I still don't know if I can control myself.
He's designed to kill.
I'm designed to kill.
You know, as a movie script, that is just so bad. Like, that is like, that's such a, that's such a straightforward, like, they could have written a better monologue than that or something. Like, I'm designed to kill. I've killed men. I've seen some things and some stuff.
I don't care.
Baby Robert Pattinson in his little pea coat saying, "I am designed to kill," is my favorite thing ever. How can you not love this? This is the skin of a killer, Bella.
This is the skin of a killer, Bella.
Now, am I saying the Twilight books are the greatest work of art ever produced? Yes. Part 1. Fiction. It has been said that Edward Cullen is an abuser. But that's an understatement. He's not just an abuser, he's a serial killer.
I've killed people before.
Many people are disturbed that Twilight is a romance, and yet the hero is dangerous and obsessive and capable of violence.
What if I'm not the hero? What if I'm the bad guy?
In other words, they're disturbed that it's the average romance novel.
I don't have the strength to stay away from you anymore.
And no, not every romance novel has a bad boy hero, but it's one of the most common tropes.
Vampires need love too.
Critics point to things like the age gap
I'm 109.
Maybe I shouldn't be dating such an old man. It's gross.
and the stalking
So you followed me.
I like watching you sleep.
and the gaslighting.
You hit your head. I think you're confused.
I know what I saw.
It's the fluorescence.
And when Twilight was at the peak of popularity, there were all these articles hand-wringing about the potential of all this to corrupt the youth. Twilight is not feminist, said The Guardian. It's female masochism. 50 Shades for teenage girls except with vampires. All these articles cited the same LiveJournal posts that went down a checklist from the National Domestic Violence Hotline to prove that Edward Cullen is an abuser. There's
I mean, yeah, they're not wrong. It is a very concerning, like, scenario for, you know, like, if it were real, but it's not. It's a fantasy. Nobody's gonna, like, run into it, although there are some weird ass fucking guys out there who would probably, like, groom and lure some girls in saying they're a vampire. There's definitely some weirdos out there. Anybody remember vampirefreaks.com? I do.
always some version of this discourse going on. Women are reading the wrong books. The books that women read are dangerous. In the 2000s, it was Twilight, and in the 2010s, it was the Twilight fanfiction, 50 Shades of Grey. At the time I'm making this video, it's a novelist called Colleen Hoover, who's sold 6 trillion books about dangerous alpha males named Ryle. I promise that in whatever year you're watching this video, there's currently some lady novelist who's caused an outrage writing stories about a dangerous, wealthy, controlling alpha male. He doesn't do romance.
I don't do romance.
But the female protagonist awakens his capacity for love at the same time as he awakens her desire for sex. Now, I don't want to dismiss the feelings of people who find this.
I mean, I feel like it's kind of this, what in the fly die. Anyways, sorry, you've now progressed to your next lifetime. So, I don't know, I feel it's like that thing where like some girls think they can fix a guy when the guy's like really like sort of untouchable. I don't know, it's like they feel like they're special or chosen or something. You know what I mean? So that there is, I think there could be some parallels there, but again, this is a fantasy.
Kind of romance disturbing. I think it's healthy and normal to be uncomfortable whenever sexuality and violence are intertwined. So I'm not exactly disagreeing with these critics of Twilight and of dark romance in general. I'm yes-anding them. Yes, Edward Cullen is creepy. He's a vampire. If Edward Cullen were real, I would log onto Twitter and I would cancel that vampire. I'd call the police and I would say, hello, 911. I'd like to report a coven of vampires outside Forks, Washington. Yes, they've smashed many salads. Yes, Edward is problematic. Yes, and Edward is not real, right? He can't hurt you. It's gonna be okay. Edward Cullen is a fictional character in a woman's fantasy, and I do feel that that is relevant to how we analyze his behavior. The main line of argument against Twilight is that this type of story normalizes and romanticizes abusive relationship dynamics. It's a monkey see, monkey do theory of media analysis, this moralistic cinema sins thing everyone is doing now. Age gaps, ding, stalking, ding, infanticide, a ding. This idea that if people read Reylo fanfiction, this will somehow normalize relationships with Sith Lords. Are tweens going to jump off a cliff because Bella does? I see the obsessive moral policing of the romance genre as a continuation of literally centuries of concern that women are reading the wrong kinds of books. When I was young, in the 18th century, ladies were advised to read what we called conduct books, such as Thomas Gisburn's An Inquiry into the Duties of the Female Sex, which instructed the reader in proper feminine virtues. Doesn't that sound exciting? To indulge in a practice of reading novels is liable to produce mischievous effects.
I am all about things that produce mischievous effects. That sounds amazing. In fact, I want to use the phrase mischievous effects a lot more. An inquiry into the duties of the female sex. That does sound exciting. That sounds like a really fantastic fucking read. It kind of reminds me of reading it was like a young women's handbook that was made for young Mormon women, and it was like it's like 19 something or other. It was like old. It was like over fucking 100 years old. And just reading it, it was like such a boring book about like how to sit, like how to talk, like what to think about. That's the kind of shit that reminds me of.
A certain kind of person has always considered romance novels sort of decadent and salacious. Some of this comes down to a question about the purpose of art. Is art supposed to be A, moral education that instructs the reader in proper virtuous conduct, or B, a mirror of reality that reflects life as it really is, or C, escapist fantasy that's primarily entertainment? Throughout the history of the novel, the genre has often been dismissed as escapist fantasy, literary opium, an addictive, corrupting influence. The first best-selling English novel ever was a romance published in 1740 by Samuel Richardson called Pamela, or Virtue Rewarded. Pamela tells the story of a virtuous 15-year-old girl named Pamela Andrews, who's employed as a maidservant by the wealthy pervert Mr. B, who repeatedly attempts to seduce her, kidnap her, sneak into her room at night, and the whole time Pamela is like, "Nay, I shan't acquiesce to this licentious rake, for my innocence and virtue are more dear to me than my life, and if the cost be my felicity, so be it, for I shan't subject my poor mother and father to the ignominy of..." In the end, Mr. B is so impressed with Pamela's virtue that he reforms his rakish ways and marries her, which is supposed to be the reward, I guess, for Pamela's chaste behavior. It's a Cinderella rags to riches fantasy, with a Prince Charming who's not so charming. Pamela is kind of like an 18th century 50 Shades of Grey. Mr. B will see you now. You could also make an argument that Pamela was the novel with the first modern fandom. There was Pamela fanfiction, Pamela merch.
Yo,
there was
go
discourse between Pamelists and anti-Pamelists about the sincerity of Pamela's virtue. Anti-Pamelists wrote parody novels like Eliza Haywood's Anti-Pamela.
Yo, they did troll posts back then. Somebody wrote an anti-Pamela book. This is amazing.
Feigned innocence detected. Wow, what a savage burn. And Henry Fielding's Shamala, both of which reframe Pamela as a
Shamala. Oh!
gold-digging social climber. This must have been an affront to Samuel Richardson, who makes his position clear on the cover page, claiming that he published Pamela, quote, "in order to cultivate the principles of virtue and religion in the minds of the youth of both sexes." So in 1740, there was already this tension between two purposes of art. Is art supposed to inflame the mind, or is it supposed to cultivate the principles of virtue and religion in the minds of the youth? Personally, I prefer to be inflamed. I want to feel good. I don't want to be good. And Stephanie Meyer apparently agrees.
I never stop and think, oh, this is a role model for people. It's fiction.
It is fiction. Whatever we think of its morality, Pamela became the template for romance novels where a young, inexperienced, impoverished girl becomes the object of fascination for an older, richer man with a dangerous edge. In the 19th century, Pride and Prejudice and Jane Eyre both fit this description, though Pride and Prejudice is obviously much more agreeable to 21st century morality than Pamela. Fitzwilliam Darcy is not Elizabeth Bennet's sexually abusive boss. He's not even a vampire. You should have thought of that, Jane Austen. What are you doing? In the 20th century, the term romance novel became associated with mass-market paperback romances, derogatorily.
See, this is what I think about when I think of romance novels. These book covers that, you can't look at too hard at the bookstore or your mom will get mad. Fabio. Always Fabio is the cover. Could you imagine being a painter for this? It's erotic. Erotic.
Known as bodice rippers, like Joanna Lindsay's Gentle Rogue with the classic Fabio clinch on the cover. They don't do covers like this anymore. Here's the new edition of Gentle Rogue with the most boring cover imaginable.
That's dumb.
Red Vern. Red Vern to the clinch covers. We used to be a country, a proper country. The Gen Z equivalent of bodice rippers is like Wattpad, BTS, werewolf fic. How many mafia twinks can there be? The specifically feminist criticism of romance novels goes back at least
Fabio
to
did have
Germaine
good
Greer,
hair.
who includes.
Is Fabio even relevant anymore? Is he even still alive? I swear he's really fucking old now. No, he's still alive. He's still kicking it. Old as shit looking, but he's still kicking it. That might not even be the most recent one. But yeah, he still got it. He's still hip. He's still with it. Hey, Philip. How old is he? 64. So that's not that old, actually. I thought he was much older than that. Hey, Mark! His hair is shacking up with a woman half his age. On the partisan West Bank.
Included a long rant about them in her 1970 manifesto, The Female Eunuch, in which she condemns romance readers as women cherishing the chains of their own bondage.
Yeah.
The point I'm trying to make is there's a historical continuity from Pamela to Twilight. Stephenie Meyer's contribution is that she took the classic romance formula, combined it with the lurid sexiness of Dracula, and then Mormonized it to the point it became appealing to 21st century teenagers and moms. Another continuity from Pamela to Twilight is the persistent anxiety of critics that the romance novel is somehow corrupting the youth or enslaving women, or both. Erin Meanley worries about Twilight, quote, "Some girls might expect their love life to look just like Bella's. Now that's what I call scary." Neha Gandhi says, "Bella is essentially a romanticized version of all our worst, weakest impulses put up on a pedestal, and that makes her dangerous." With a lot of criticism of Twilight, you get the impression that the critic both senses the attraction to Twilight and is uncomfortable with that attraction, and the anxious hand-wringing is a manifestation of that ambivalence. Even Germaine Greer admits, quote, "I cannot claim to be fully emancipated from the dream that some enormous man, say 6'6", heavily shouldered and so forth to match, will crush me to his tweeds, look down into my eyes, and leave the taste of heaven or the scorch of his passion on my waiting lips." Remember what they
that
took
sounds
from
great
you.
to me.
I want to argue that both the fascination with vampire romance and the discomfort with it are natural reactions to something paradoxical in the experience of erotic love itself. Twilight is everything we fear in sexuality: the excess, the irrationality, the transgression, the violence, the loss of self-possession, the violation of boundaries.
None of them belong to themselves anymore. And the sickest part is, their genes tell them they're happy about it.
Stephenie Meyer is continuing an ancient mythological tradition of storytelling that equates love and death. Think Hades and Persephone, The Temptation of Eve, Swan Lake, Romeo and Juliet. Like Romeo and Juliet, Twilight is a moderate teenage love escalated to the point of death. And you could argue that Romeo and Juliet are closer to equals, where Edward and Bella are predator and prey. The lion fell in love with the lamb.
So the lion fell in love with the lamb.
But look at the big picture in Twilight. The lamb doesn't stay a lamb. By the end of the story, she becomes a lion. She's a powerful vampire with a rich husband and a magical demon baby. Yes, Edward is a dangerous predator, but his power is subservient to his love for Bella, and it's deployed for her protection.
I feel very protective of you.
She becomes powerful because he loves her. This is not a story of becoming prey. It's a story of rising to the level of the predator. Behind every Cinderella fantasy is a female will to power. The debates about romance fiction are not frivolous. They concern the deepest questions in women's lives. What does happiness look like? What do we want from love? From sex? What does it mean to succeed as a woman? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be anything? Why is Twilight like this? To answer these questions and more, I read the entire Twilight saga twice. I watched the movies 37 times. I read 3,000 pages of psychoanalysis and 8,000 pages of queer and radical feminist theory. Now, some people say that I'm overly fixated on Twilight, that Mother's having another episode, and maybe some of those people are my psychiatrist, and maybe they're trying to put me on mood stabilizers. But here's why those people are wrong.
Okay, so we've determined now through this first part that people, are heavily critical of the book, but it's like they're not exactly wrong that this does depict like a really unhealthy, dangerous sort of relationship dynamic. But like, this is fantasy. Like, there is such thing as fantasy, and I think there's still, like, people who can, you know, differentiate between the two, obviously. Laura says, who is this woman? This is Contrapoints. Her name is Natalie. I forget her last name. She's amazing, though. Extremely intelligent. So now we're going to get into the concept of desire. Now, this is really interesting. Let's see what kind of Neogenian parallels we can find with desire.
Part 2. Desire. One way to state the question, the mystery we're trying to solve, is why would someone romanticize the relationship between a vampire and a human, between a predator and his prey? Isn't this problematic, with its age gaps and its power dynamics? One answer is that yes, it is problematic. And it's problematic because in order for a story to have a plot, there needs to be a problem, what is sometimes known as a conflict. Conflict creates tension, both romantic and narrative, and in Twilight, Edward's vampirism is the source of that tension. Listen to how Stephanie Meyer summarizes the dream that inspired Twilight.
A boy and a girl in the meadow having this conversation about how they were in love and the difficulties in that because he wanted to kill her. He was a vampire.
That is a problem. Yes, you're right.
The danger of Edward wanting to kill Bella adds to the tension. It makes the story more exciting. A common complaint from Twilight haters is that the first book has no plot. I feel like this complaint comes from people who don't understand romance as a genre. It's like that.
I never got that sense, because I did read the first book. I never got the sense it didn't have any plot. I did get the sense that it was a very simple plot, but yeah, like, if you're not understanding of, like, the sort of journey of tension being introduced and problems being introduced and the nuances that it takes to, like, get to, like, a conclusion of it in romance, like, it is going to seem really boring. It's all psychological, really.
Goodreads
Pride and Prejudice is just a bunch of people going to each other's houses. It really is, though. That's not wrong.
View of Pride and Prejudice, just a bunch of people going to each other's houses. Strictly speaking, true, but this person's idea of plot is too narrow. They think that plot just means physical action. Even Stephanie Meyer seems to think this to some extent, because there's a lot of what I would consider gratuitous action forced into these stories. The last movie ends with this giant battle between the Mormon vampires and their army of ethnic stereotypes. Good missionary work, I guess. And their sworn enemies, the Volturi.
The Italian scum.
The Volturi are like a Mormon's idea of Catholics. You know, they live in the Vatican, they speak Italian, they're gay. I do love the Volturi. They're my kind of vamps. I guess it was the 2000s and everything had to have giant battle scenes because Lord of the Rings. Why can't a romance just be a romance? Pride and Prejudice didn't end with Darcy hunting down Wickham in a high-speed carriage chase.
Isn't my husband
That
a
would have been
fine
so much
horseman?
better, though.
Romance stories can have action elements, but they're primarily driven by emotion, pining, longing, yearning even. The plot of a romance is always desire deferred. In her Natural History of the Romance novel, romance scholar Pamela Regis says, quote, "The barrier is the conflict in a romance novel."
It makes me think about concepts of desire and how, like, desire is, like, the thing in itself that you actually like, not necessarily the goal that you attain at the end of desire. This is gonna get interesting. I'm already thinking about sort of reaching just what am I trying to say? I'm having a brain fart. I'm still putting my thoughts together. Hold on.
It is anything that keeps the union of heroine and hero from taking place. In Pride and Prejudice, the barrier is in the title. It's Darcy.
Okay, so it's making me think about in the Neogenian like concept of all of us as Zetas, right? Like we're not at our source, we are Zetas. Our personalities, depending on our egos that we have each lifetime, that doesn't matter. For all eternity, we are ultimately Zetas, and at some point in this universe, we will all unite back together into like a sort of singularity point. But I think there's a sort of a deep desire that's involved with that. Like everybody to an extent has this deep desire to come together with something, obtain something, a sort of unity. Everybody has a deep desire for unity at the bottom, and it's just like a lot of people just don't know how to express that or really what it's about. And you could express it in ways of like romantic love, friendship love, this, that, and the other, but a desire for like a collective unity, that would be something to think about when it comes to terms of like desire. I think inherently we all have that deep desire to unify as a collective and become a network mind. A network of minds. Not getting rid of our egos entirely, but becoming as if we were like one thing.
Darcy's Pride and Elizabeth's Prejudice. And Mrs. Bennet certainly isn't helping either.
Bingley's wealth is nothing to his.
Lower your voice, woman. Everyone can hear you.
I don't care if he does.
In Twilight, you may be thinking the barrier is Jacob.
Hey, beautiful.
Because there are triangular moments between Jacob, Bella, and Edward. But let's face the facts. Team Jacob never stood a chance.
It's always been him.
The barrier is really just that Edward wants to drink that girl's sweet blood. And who can blame him? I've been thinking about taking a sip myself. In Twilight, blood drinking is a metaphor for sinful lust, for violent lust. Edward's inner conflict is between lust and love. He loves Bella, but he lusts for her blood. And because his bloodlust will kill her, he has to resist the temptation of bloodlust in order to love Bella.
I still don't know if I can control myself.
That's the barrier he overcomes. It's an internal barrier, a psychological conflict.
Stop. Find the will.
The barrier is essential to romance stories because narrative is sustained by tension, and so is romantic love. Now, I should explain that by romantic love, I mean what the ancient Greeks called eros. Eros is the ancient Greek personification of erotic love, that archery twink, better known by his Roman name Cupid. And I'm not just bringing this up to be pretentious, though that is a benefit. In English, the word love is awkwardly non-specific. You love your friends, you love your husband, you love your dad, you love your dog, you love God.
I mean, love ultimately is a unifying force. But love isn't always perfectly clean, right? Love can be mixed with many other things in subjective experiences that we have as we note around the reality, or around the holos. But it is a unifying force, but not all love is the same, and not all love is clean. Some love is really dirty, dark, and deadly.
You love Twizzlers, love, as if it's all the same. Greek has different words for all these kinds of love. There's philia, brotherly love, agape, spiritual love, storge, familial love, philautia, self-love, and then there's eros, the problem child.
Yeah, eros is typically the love that people, not everybody, but a lot of people sort of crave and strive and search for.
Eros is the aching, passionate longing of romance novels, of Sappho's poetry, of Romeo and Juliet. It's similar to what the psychologist Dorothy Tennov called limerence. Limerence is like an adult crush, sexual by nature, intense to the point of obsession and anguish. Eros, or limerence, or romantic love, whatever we want to call it, is the emotional impetus of the Twilight Saga. People who have never experienced limerence will be confused by Bella's behavior in Twilight, because it's extreme, it's irrational, it's obsessive, it's all-consuming, it's at times masochistic. In New Moon, after Edward breaks up with Bella, she shrieks in agony all through the night and then sits in her depression chair staring dejectedly out the window for 3 consecutive months. There's a possibility. Meow, 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 meow. To an aromantic person, this might look like madness, because it is madness.
It's just not normal, this behavior.
But to anyone who's been in love, it's your madness. Unlike other forms of love, erotic love is painful.
Yes! It's not...
When you left, you took everything with you. The absence of him is everywhere I look.
The absence of him is everywhere I look. Absence is the essential nature of erotic love, because eros is desire, and desire is lack. You want what you don't have. The essayist Anne Carson explores this idea in one of my favorite books, Eros the Bittersweet. The title comes from one of Sappho's poems. Eros, once again a limb loosener, whirls me sweet bitter, impossible to fight off, creature stealing up. So why is Eros bitter? Well, we say that a person in love is in search of their other half. In Plato's Symposium, Aristophanes tells a myth about the origin of love, which says that we all used to be double what we are now, round beings with 4 arms and 2 heads and 2 sets of reproductive organs, until Zeus split us all in half. Why?
Those are one of those stories that I find interesting, a sort of origin story of people, and sort of an explanation for desire, for a desire for unity, even though that unity isn't quite, I don't know, articulated, I guess, except for in this sort of like eros erotic love. But like the concept of like 2 beings, or a being being split apart into 2 beings, I think is fascinating, and somewhat is like the Neogenian concept, where it's not just like 2 beings that were, or 1 being that was split. It's like, think of like 1 being shattered into countless pieces, like shards of like glass or crystal or whatever, completely sharded, and each one of those shards is us. Like we are like I'm a shard, you're a shard. Sometimes we all shard our pants, but you know, think of it that way. But like when we're together as that 1 being, it's not as if there's no individuals, right? Like we're still all individuals. We're all just synchronized as a network mind, and it is as if it is 1 being, because everything is so in sync and everything, you know, streamlines very well, all the information and all the expressions and stuff like that. But imagine that not being split apart by another external creator, God, of course. Imagine that we, as that being, we all decide to separate from each other. So we decide to crack ourselves and shatter ourselves and separate ourselves. And the whole goal would be to come back together again. But it takes a lot of time. It's a big game. It takes countless lifetimes. You know, it takes a whole cosmic age of from when the universe, from the Big Bang down to whatever, the big whatever it is at the end there, what we would call, you know, the sort of reaching the singularity and coming together again. So that's really interesting there, and that's kind of like, that's what I think about a lot, you know, when listening to her to explain this, different types of like desire and love. I'm like, what about like the collective desire to come together again? Because that to me is very Neogenian.
Why is God always an abusive father?
Yes.
Concerning. So when we fall in love, we're yearning to heal the trauma of human nature, to be whole again. Yearning is always a desire for something we feel like we have lost. And it's that
yearning is a desire for something we feel we've lost. And I feel like that what is sort of a fundamental desire of all Zetas is to come together again, because we've lost that ultimate connection. We have all been there before in perfect synchronization and in perfect unity and harmony, but we've lost that due to our own choice, because when we're together in that perfect synchronized, wonderful, ceremonious harmonious whatever, it's so perfect, right? It's so perfect. But how long is that perfection going to last before it's not exciting anymore? So, you know, we have to, we purposefully create a conflict. We create a story to follow. We shatter ourselves. The conflict, the blockage, the, you know, the way to defer the desire so that we could experience desire.
Of loss, of separation that makes Eros bitter. And Carson says, quote, pleasure and pain at once register upon the lover inasmuch as the desirability of the love object derives, in part, from its lack. Because desire is derived from lack, something has to separate the lover and the beloved for desire to sustain itself. In romance fiction, that something is the barrier. The ruse, Anne Carson calls it, the third thing that triangulates desire. The purpose of the barrier...
I would say the holos is the barrier, perhaps, in this case. It's the barrier that we have to work through and overcome in order to gain that unity back together.
Is, quote, to represent Eros as deferred, defied, obstructed, hungry, organized around a radiant absence, to represent Eros as lack. When the barrier is overcome, when the two lovers unite, that's the end of your romance novel. Because the narrative...
see what I'm saying? When everybody unites, okay, so going back to the Neogenian thing, when we all come back together and we're all in perfect unity, that's where it ends, right? That's the end of the desire.
Is sustained by desire, and desire is sustained by separation. So when the separation ends, the desire ends, and that's the end of your story. The lovers kiss. Odysseus is home. The end. Happily ever after is, of course, not a reality.
So we end that desire. We satisfy that desire. We become one whole. We become one and whole again. And then it's that point we think, okay, this ain't gonna work out. So what do? We shatter again. We all shatter. We're all different shards of the same piece.
It's just a device of romance fiction. In reality, when two people in love unite, it's what we call a long-term relationship, which, I'm sorry if I'm the one breaking this news to you, but many long-term relationships are not, in fact, happily ever after. It's not easy to sustain desire over years. You have to keep inventing new ruses, new barriers that create the space for desire to continuously reignite. Successful couples either learn to be content with a more pragmatic, non-erotic love, or they're somehow able to sustain Eros, falling in love with each other again and again. But I fear that's the exception. The rule is absence makes the heart grow fonder. Another way to put this would be to say that desire prefers the hunt to the kill. And maybe that's one reason sexuality is often represented as predator and prey. The first shot of the first Twilight movie is of a deer being stalked by a predator. This tells us what kind of story it's going to be.
So the lion fell in love with the lamb.
Sorry, I'm just thinking about that shot with the deer. Because, you know, somebody just like, they have like a deer there. It's probably like farm raised or something. And somebody with a camera just runs at it and is like, just to get the shot of the deer running away. Poor thing.
The first shot of the first Twilight movie is of a deer being stalked by a predator. This tells us what kind of story it's going to be.
It's just somebody like running at that poor thing.
Edward the Lion Cullen embodies hunter sexuality. He glares, he stalks, he pounces. Bella, at least at first, is his prey.
What a stupid lamb.
A similar trope of lover as hunter exists on ancient Greek urns, which often depict a lover not in possession, but in pursuit of his beloved. Anne Carson says, quote, the moment of ideal desire on which vase painters as well as poets are inclined to focus is not the moment when the two unite in happiness. What is pictured is the moment when the beloved turns and runs. It's the moment of obstructed desire John Keats described in his Ode on a Grecian Urn. Bold lover, never forever canst thou kiss, though winning near the goal, yet do not grieve. She cannot fade, though thou hast not thy bliss. Forever wilt thou love, and she be fair.
Makes me think about the concept of the sun being masculine, the moon being feminine, and the concept that the sun constantly chases the moon, and the moon constantly runs away. Because the moon just wants freedom, and the sun wants the moon. I don't know what that is originally, but I know it's a fairly common thing.
The poet, or the urn painter.
Hey Nanu, good to see you. So Nanu, what I'm talking about, I'm not, at least me personally, like, Contrapoints here is analyzing like the concepts of romance and the stuff within it. I'm finding Neogenian parallels, so I'm talking about love and things in terms of, you know, us being united at some point and then splitting apart, and then the whole goal is to come back together again, and that whole experience of journey in between. But I'm not really getting into like young people being in love and what they should and shouldn't do. But I just wanted to let you know where we're at with that, because let's see, we are only a half hour into this. What time is it? Oh, we're doing pretty good.
Captures that moment of desire for all time. The hunter suspended in the middle of a hunt.
By the way,
desire.
I love that she has to like censor the art, you know, and it's a picture of a family. That's pretty brilliant.
For all time, the hunter suspended in the middle of a hunt. Desire is like a dog that wants to chase a squirrel but not to catch it. And it may be this fugitive element of desire that gives rise to double standards, where the beloved, the one who is pursued, is valued only as long as she is unattainable. To quote Anne Carson again, because I love her so much, a titillating triangle comes into play between the lover, the bad girl who attracts him, and the good girl who honors him by saying no. In this kind of dating ritual, the barrier is the good girl, who is modest, elusive, hard to get. Like in the 90s, there was this infamous dating manual for women called The Rules, time-tested secrets for capturing the heart of Mr. Right. It included such advice as, always end phone calls first, don't accept a Saturday night date after Wednesday. In other words, play hard to get. The Rules strikes many people as oppressively old-fashioned at best and straight-up psychopathic at worst. And I agree, I don't think The Rules should be taken too seriously, but there is a little grain of truth in it. Simone de Beauvoir says, the night
Simone! I've read some Simone. She's kind of interesting.
Departing for new adventures offends his lady, yet she has nothing but contempt for him if he remains at her feet. This is the torture of impossible love. To paraphrase the psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, desire thinks it wants to be satisfied, but really it wants to go on desiring.
I just lost my sound.
Fever dream high in the quiet of the night, echoing Shakespeare's comparison of love to a fever, a desire that feeds on its own frustration. And I'm pretty sure Taylor agrees with what—
Oh, it was off for you too? Yeah, something went weird there. Let me back it up a little.
the winning near the goal, yet do not grieve. She cannot fade, though thou hast not thy bliss. Forever wilt thou love, and she be fair. The poet, or the urn painter, captures that moment of desire for all time, the hunter suspended in the middle of a hunt. Desire is like a dog that wants to chase a squirrel but not to catch it. And it may be this fugitive element of desire that gives rise to double standards, where the beloved, the one who is pursued, is valued only as long as she is unattainable. To quote Anne Carson again, because I love her so much, a titillating triangle comes into play between the lover, the bad girl who attracts him, and the good girl who honors him by saying no. In this kind of dating ritual, the barrier is the good girl, who is modest, elusive, hard to get. Like in the 90s, there was this infamous dating manual for women called Dating Saturday Night Date After Wednesday. In other words, play hard to get. The rules strikes many people as oppressively old-fashioned at best and straight-up psychopathic at worst. And I agree, I don't think the rules should be taken too seriously, but there is a little grain of truth in it. Simone de Beauvoir says, "The knight departing for new adventures offends his lady, yet she has nothing but contempt for him if he remains at her feet. This is the torture of impossible love." To paraphrase the psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, desire thinks it wants to be satisfied, but really it wants to go on desiring. Desire is desire for desire. Shakespeare says something similar in Sonnet 147. "My love is as a fever, longing still for that which longer nurseth the disease." Shakespeare compares desire, that is love, eros, to a sickness that wants to perpetuate itself. "What doesn't kill me makes me want you more," is Taylor Swift's version of the same thought, in a song that begins, "Fever dream high in the quiet of the night," echoing Shakespeare's comparison of love to a fever, a desire that feeds on its own frustration. And I'm
Laura says, the Omega point is when we all come together again in perfect unity as one without division. It is a whole different experience than anything here. Yeah, totally. But I think where I'm drawing a connection in my brain is I feel like a lot of the kinds of unity we desire that come out in fantasies and even in like everyday life, I think there's the seed of that desire has something to do with the fact that we have been separated since that point of unification, since we've shattered and we are coming back together. And I think experiencing different kinds of loves is a way to get that unity again, because love is uniting, but as I've said before, it's not always clean and it's not always fun.
Pretty sure Taylor agrees with what I'm saying in this video. Also, I apologize for criticizing her in my J.K. Rowling video. I've since read a bunch of Tumblr posts that convince me that she's gay. Inspiring. Follow the money. In an episode of Seinfeld, George Costanza makes a distinction between two types of desire, yearning and craving.
Do you ever yearn?
Yearn? Do I yearn?
Have you yearned?
Well, not recently. I craved. I crave all the time, constant craving. I haven't yearned.
What is the difference between yearning and craving? Well, let's start with craving. What kinds of things do you crave? You crave a cigarette, a sandwich, an orgasm, a drink. You satisfy a craving for something, but then an hour later, you crave it again. So maybe craving is a desire that can be satisfied, but only for a moment. Craving is like Shakespeare's description of lust in Sonnet 129. The expensive spirit in a waste of shame is lust in action, enjoyed no sooner but despised straight, a bliss in proof and proved a very woe, before a joy proposed, behind.
I hate Shakespeare. I'm gonna say it. Hot take. Shakespeare sucks. I don't know. I just really have no more explanation than that. I don't really care for him. And it's not because I don't understand. I understand him perfectly. It's just, he's just so damn pretentious, you know? So, I mean, the fucker would just invent fucking shit to say. And everybody would be like, this is brilliant. It's like, no, there's nobody else out there doing that. Like, he's just so damn pretentious.
A dream. Aw, poor baby.
His writing. I think his writing is pretentious. Him himself, I have no fucking idea.
Bill was really having a hard time in those sonnets. How is yearning different from craving? Well, maybe it's the difference between love and lust, the difference between Shakespeare's sonnet 129 and 147. Craving is enjoyed no sooner but despised straight, and yearning is a fever longing still for that which longer nurseth the disease. Isn't this what Stephanie Meyer's really trying to say here? Edward Cullen craves blood, but he yearns for Bella. It's lust against limerence. Let's talk about yearning.
Do you ever yearn?
What kinds of things do you yearn for? You yearn for union with the
Collective unity. That's what I yearn for.
person you're in love with, or for union with God, like in Psalm 63.
There you go.
My whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water. You yearn for God. You don't crave God. No one says I need to get my God fix. Don't talk to me until I've had my God. You yearn to feel whole again, maybe by finding your other half, or through some kind of shroomy oneness. Or maybe Freud was right, that it's really Mother who we yearn for. Mother, I mean, we did used to be one with her body in the womb, and then they cut the umbilical cord, and they weaned you from her breast, and life has been downhill ever since. Yearning, maybe you yearn for the good old days. Nostalgia, a yearning for lost time. Or you yearn for nostalgia's inverse, utopian socialism. Think about the kind of leftists who talk about the
Wait, did that say gay space community?
Nostalgia's inverse, utopian.
Yes, that does say gay space Oh, it says gay space communism. Fully automated luxury gay space communism. I'm down. I'm not a communist. I don't really give a shit, but it's gay, so I'm there. It's gay and it's luxurious. That's all I need.
Socialism. Think about the kind of leftists who talk about the revolution like it's the rapture. These people are yearning for a different time, but it's one they imagine in the
Yo, that was an important thing. Let me backtrack because I was too busy yapping. Oh my god, that dog outside. She's talking about people yearning for the future, for like which is what we do as Neogenians. We yearn for a new world. We yearn for a new way of life. We yearn for more unity. We yearn for change. We yearn for a bright new future, a brand new future. We yearn for a brand new paradigm. We yearn a lot. We are McYearnsin. But listen to this.
Nostalgia, a yearning for lost time. Or you yearn for nostalgia's inverse, utopian socialism. Think about the kind of leftists who talk about the revolution like it's the rapture. These people are yearning for a different time, but it's one they imagine in the future. Yearning, I think, is inherently erotic.
Okay, so we erotically yearn for a new world, but we're not. She's talking about leftists, like sort of yearning for like a rapture-like revolution. I think Neogenians are much more than that. We recognize there has to be a destruction process to things before you create something new. But we're more interested in what the hell we're actually going to create, less interested in like how to destroy. Because that's going to come with it. As you start implementing a new system, the old one fades away. It inevitably gets destroyed. But if you're only yearning for that destruction part, I feel like that's just a craving. You're just craving an enactment of war. You're craving a reenactment of a revolution. Neogenianism is so much more than that. The Neogenian are much more than that. We yearn for a future, a brighter paradigm for humanity. Sure, we crave revolution a little bit. Doesn't everybody?
It's not necessarily sexual, but it's erotic in the sense that unlike craving, which can be satisfied, though only for a moment, yearning is a desire that can't really be satisfied at all. Like, you know how no matter what you accomplish in life, you can never really be satisfied because you always still feel the same void inside eating away at you all?
Well, yeah, Yeah, because we're gonna yearn all the way to the omega point, baby.
All the time? Well, this is the reason for that. We all have a black hole deep inside of us, and nothing can ever really fill it. Some people call it a God-shaped hole, but I'm pretty sure my God-shaped hole is shaped like Actually, I think the hole is flexible. It kind of shapes itself to whatever it is we think we're missing. The things we desire become symbols of the hole, and we come to believe that we're yearning for this symbol. Anne Carson says, quote, "Who is the real subject of most love poems? Not the beloved. It is that hole."
It's true. Wow. I never thought about it that way. You read most poetry about love, and most of the writing is about the sensation of yearning and desire. It's a very tiny part of it is like the actual person you're yearning for. It's mostly that sensation. Why is that deleted?
Now would be a good time to admire my restraint and not making any jokes about filling my holes. Very tasteful, very ladylike, I know. You may praise me in the comments section now. Lacan says something similar. I'll quote Zizek's summary because Lacan is illegible. If you don't care about philosophy, just ignore these names. Close your eyes and pretend this isn't happening. Quote, "The drive's goal to reach its object is false. It masks its true aim, which is to reproduce its own circular movement by repeatedly missing its object. This is the trap of yearning, of unrequited love, and of nostalgia. You yearn for the good old days because you lack them. They are lost time." But try explaining that to the people in the comments section of a 90s Fruity Pebbles commercial pining for the lost golden age. I miss the world when there was still love left in it.
Yummy Fruity Pebbles in a bowl.
On second thought, the Fruity Pebbles commercial may be the only thing holding this man's sanity together. Let's just let him have this.
I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them.
We all wish there was a way to feel like you're in the good old days, but there isn't. It's impossible. Why? Well, you're never in the good old days because you can only yearn for what you've lost. The good old days are old because they're gone, and they're good because you idealize what you yearn for, and you only yearn for what you do not have. Your childhood is dead, and no amount of Fruity Pebbles will bring it back. I've tried.
In a cat bowl? Is that a cat bowl with whiskey? Yes! Fruity Pebbles and Jack Daniels.
Advertising simulates desire by invoking lack, often yearning for beauty, prestige, and glamour. Glamour simply is the unattainable, the always out of reach. Do you ever feel like Goldilocks in a world where the porridge is never just right? I feel like I'm describing some kind of pessimist's prayer. You can't get what you want, and if you do, it won't make you happy. And if it does, not for long.
Ah.
The only way to escape the cycle of suffering, the only path to salvation, is to both like and subscribe. Give me your money. You know, I think I crave because I yearn. Suppose, hypothetically, someone named, I don't know, Veronica is an unrequited love. And suppose the pain of that drives Veronica, hypothetically, for educational and harm reduction purposes, to get a little bit addicted to... She's craving to cope with the yearning.
Like my own personal brand of heroin.
What's your favorite brand of heroin? Leave a comment. Maybe you could visualize cravings as like epicycles of the larger cycle of yearning that orbits around the void.
Constant craving.
I promise this is about Twilight. Yearning is bittersweet, and the bitterness of yearning comes from the absence at its core, from the futility of grasping at something always out of reach.
The absence of him is everywhere I look.
But what about the sweetness? The sweetness of yearning comes from It's not easy having a good time. The sweetness of yearning comes from anticipation. It's the hope that just maybe you might finally grasp the thing you're reaching for this time. There's a German word for this because, of course, Vorfreude, which means pre-pleasure, the pleasure of anticipation, is the reason that we gift wrap presents. As Ted Bundy said, the fantasy that accompanies and generates the anticipation that precedes the crime is always more stimulating than the immediate aftermath of the crime itself. So true. Anticipation is the basic pleasure of eroticism.
And I do think that if you skip right ahead to sex in a story, you're missing out on a lot of really exciting things. The first time you hold somebody's hand, your heart just goes crazy. It's this amazing experience that you go home and tell your friends about. Oh my gosh, he touched my hand, you know.
A striptease is infinitely more erotic than a nudist colony. Why? Anticipation, tension, and release. The point of striptease is that the audience wants to see a naked woman. But once the woman is naked, once the barrier is removed, the show's over. Striptease is like the visual equivalent of a slow-build romance novel. Aren't mystery stories like this too? Are mysteries erotic? The pleasure is in unraveling the mystery.
Yes! You have yourself, which is the lover. You have the truth that you're trying to obtain, which is the beloved, and in the barrier is the mystery, and half of the mystery, or the mystery is the drive to find the truth. Without that mystery, without that drive, without that barrier, it wouldn't be so interesting to find the truth, would it?
The yearning for the truth, the anticipation of the answer. Once the puzzle is solved, you lose interest. This is how people become conspiracy theorists. They get addicted to that rush of discovery, going down the rabbit hole. It's the pursuit of truth rather than the possession of it. A better outlet for this urge is philosophy. Philosophy is inherently erotic in that philosophical questions by nature can never be definitively answered. So the
Yes, some can. Yes, they can.
epistemic yearning never ends. In The Importance of Being Earnest, Algie says,
"The very essence of romance is uncertainty.
Uncertainty is also the very essence of gambling. It's why I wasted $2,000 playing Egypt Quest. Gambling is addictive because the Vorfreude, the anticipation of a maybe win, is more compelling than the win itself.
Very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. One may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. And then the whole excitement is over.
Uncertainty sustains the bittersweet mix of hope and anxiety, which is ruinous when it leads to the junky behavior of gambling addicts and serial adultery, but which I think can be safely simulated in art. Consider Twilight, to choose a random example. Will this romance end in love or murder? It doesn't matter if you know it will end with a happily ever after, it's about the process, how you get there. Consider the music of my youth. Mozart, the Symphony number 25 in G minor. Guess what chord it ends on? Spoiler alert, G minor. People think Mozart is stuffy now, but it's very erotic music. It's all about tension and release. Mozart builds tension through devices like rising melody, increased dissonance, increased volume, rhythmic complexity, harmonic wandering from the tonic, or simply adding more notes.
Too many notes.
The tension is released in a chord sequence called a cadence. Music teachers always describe the cadence as returning home, comparing the musical narrative structure to a hero's journey. On its own, the cadence is kind of boring, so it's often drawn out and ornamented with a trill. What is the point of this gesture? Well, it heightens the tension just as it's about.
Everything, I feel like everything in reality has like a story to it. You know, it has a beginning, a progression, an end. It's got, you know, challenges, it has blockages, it has things to overcome. It's like the very nature of like a story. And music very much falls in line with that. And that's what we talk about a lot as Neogenians in the Neogenian system, is like just the archetypal underpinnings of pretty much everyday life. You know, like we just live stories constantly. Reality is stories. I mean, even eating a meal is a story, right? It starts with the thought, you start cooking it up. You eat it, and then it's gone, and then you poop it. Like, it's got a beginning, Middle and an end.
To be released.
Hey, Elise! Good to see you, Elise.
The trill occurs at that pre-climactic moment when gratification is imminent. It's very sexual, it's musical edging. When you hear it in isolation, it just sounds like an 18th century musical stock phrase, but that's exactly the point I'm making. The release is only pleasurable because of the tension that is accumulated in anticipation of it. Without the tension, there is no release. And that's just kind of the nature of human pleasure. It's fire and ice. Herr Dr. Father says, we are so constituted that we can only intensely enjoy contrasts. Without the bitterness of tension, there is no sweetness of release. Philosophies that seek to liberate us.
There are many opposites within the fabric of reality, and many opportunities to unionize opposites in many different combinations.
From suffering, advise that we let go of desire. Stoicism says we should limit desire to things we can control. Buddhism says we can stop craving and clinging by recognizing that desire arises from impermanence and from the illusion of the self. Philosophers and gurus are correct to recognize that desire leads to suffering. But detachment from desire is not bliss. If someone is promising you bliss or some mystical solution to the wound of human nature, that's probably a cult. Watch out for that. Detachment results in something more low-key, like tranquility or peace. Wise men are always saying, stop clinging to desire and you'll find peace. Wise men are always saying this. The Tao Te Ching, chapter 46 says, one who knows that enough is enough will always have enough. That is wisdom, and wisdom is soothing, but it's not exciting. So it's really your choice to make. Do you want to read novels about wise people being at peace? Or do you choose violence? Do you choose the world's most dangerous predator? Personally, I think wisdom is best left to the wise. Couldn't be me. I like things and stuff too much. The wheel of samsara is very much my stomping ground. So in Maryland, there's this place called Royal Farms.
Oh, Elise. Yeah, me too. I think I got maybe like an hour into it and I fell asleep, but I wasn't able to finish it. We're actually just getting to that, but I don't know if we'll finish this tonight, but I'm trying to get a hard try because there's a lot of interesting Neogenian parallels like to this, and just the whole diving into the philosophy and just examining things like love, lust, desire, you know, it's really cool. And it's all stemming just from her experience of reading the Twilight novels, which is, it's fascinating. Like, this is really fascinating. These are really intense, like, subjects. And now we're getting on to a new section. We just finished the chapter about desire. Oh, no. So, we did the intro. We did the part about fiction. We're doing desire. Now we're going to be talking about fantasy in general.
It's like if a KFC was inside of a 7-Eleven. They're open all the time. You get cigarettes, chicken, energy drinks.
Yeah, that's all you need.
Part 3, fantasy. Okay. We need to talk about the sexual aspect. I know YouTube is trying to be more family friendly, and as a friend of the family, I respect that. So I might have to use some euphemisms, some indirect language. By the time I'm done with them, the family is gonna be on their hands and knees begging for more. Many people have commented on the unguarded, blurting it all out quality of Twilight. In one interview, Robert Pattinson said he thinks that Twilight is Stephenie Meyer's sexual fantasy.
I was convinced that Stephenie was convinced she was Bella, and you're like reading her sort of sexual fantasy about some, and especially when she says, oh, it was based on a dream.
I think this is another reason.
Nobody hates the Twilight movies more than Robert Pattinson. Seriously, nobody in the world hates them more than him. I've seen him make plenty of comments saying that he just really, like, I mean, he did it. It was his job, but I don't think he wasn't really a fan.
Reason that people find Twilight cringe. Stephenie Meyer is taking dictation directly from the inner goddess.
And it's very honest. It's really, really honest. And that's kind of what's weird about it.
I love that about Twilight. It's like reading someone's diary. Now I realize here I'm stepping into a vicious debate that's been going on for decades about the difference between romance and erotica. What is the difference between romance and erotica? I got so curious about this that I actually contacted the English departments of Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, and I was surprised that they pretty much all agreed on a definition that romance is for good girls and erotica is for sluts. Pornography, of course, is for men. There's a buck-wild debate from 1987 between romance titans Jackie Collins and Barbara Cartland, who between them sold more than 1 billion books. The debate gets, well, you kind of just have to see it to believe it.
It's evil, really. We've perfected the books that you write, quite frankly.
Barbara Cartland says that Jackie Collins' books are evil. Why? Because they have sex scenes.
Well, I really don't think there's anything disgusting about naked people rolling around on beds. I thought that's what you're supposed to do when you're married. How do you know?
And according to Cartland, women's fiction shouldn't have sex scenes because A, think of the children.
Have you ever thought of the effects it has on young people?
Yes, they love it. And
But that is what is
I was
wrong.
reading it under...
2, it's helping the perverts.
Don't you think it has helped the perverts? It has.
And D, according to Cartland, we should encourage purity for women. That is, asexuality.
You know, I believe in purity for women, and this is the thing I've been fighting for.
It's a classic good girls versus sluts debate.
All this awful abuse of children, all that comes from a permissive society.
There's something so surreal about what I can only describe as an 80-year-old woman in clown drag lecturing everyone about sexual purity. Like, what is this? The British aren't coming.
I was just gonna comment, like, what the fuck is with her getup? Jesus Lord.
Aren't coming. Cartland endorses the Victorian viewpoint that women, ladies, are asexual.
You were a lady. You were dressed in China. You were something perfect, slightly sacred.
This is a view taken by 19th century sexologist Richard von Krafft-Ebing, author of Psychopathia Sexualis, one of the first attempts to scientifically study human sexuality.
I actually like I just like how that's pronounced. Psychopathia Sexualis. It's a great, like, album name or something.
So
that's it. I'm gonna write a sex album and it's gonna be called Psychopathia Sexualis.
Scandalous at the time of publication that it had to be printed in Latin to keep the hoi polloi from getting notions. Quote, woman, if physically and mentally normal and properly educated, has but little sensual desire. This is an absurd claim on its face. If women instinctually...
That makes so much sense why, like, people are so critical of romance novels, because they're mostly read by women and there's still, like, this weird disdain and, like, undertone that women just, like, shouldn't desire, they shouldn't lust, they shouldn't want sex or really, like, enjoy it. So just the whole concept of women enjoying sex just for the sheer sake of enjoying sex, it's still taboo for some reason. Like, it's 2024 and it's still a taboo issue.
Have but little sensual desire, then why is that contingent on their being properly educated? The answer is basically that for Victorians, the Madonna-whore dichotomy was an ontological distinction.
So there was an enormous gap between the lady and the prostitute, and no young man who took me out would ever have thought of asking me to go to bed with him. They asked me to marry him.
It was understood that there were really two very different kinds of women. There were real women, ladies, who were by definition asexual, and then there was this other category of person, prostitutes or fallen women, who were technically female, but who were seen as degraded, ruined beings, with desire equal to, if not exceeding, that of men. Strumpets, trollops, slutacious whores. Ladies were seen as delicate and
ladies of the evening.
Innocent, sacred treasures to be protected.
You were a lady. You were dressed in China. You were something perfect, slightly sacred.
And there's a kind of privilege that came with that, but at the cost of sexuality.
And I believed it for years. I thought that ladies didn't feel passion and prostitutes did.
Lady status has often only been available to middle and upper class white women, with prostitutes and fallen women relegated to this other category that was seen as sexual but degraded. The idea that purity is the natural state of women is actually fairly recent. Ancient and medieval Europeans had almost the opposite view of the Victorians, often seeing women as more sexual than men. According to the most widely read encyclopedia of the Middle Ages, quote, the word femina comes from the Greek derived from the force of fire, because her concupiscence is very passionate. Women are more libidinous than men. In an ancient Greek myth, Zeus and Hera are feuding about whether men or women enjoy sex more, so they summon the transsexual prophet Tiresias to resolve the issue, and Tiresias says, of 10 parts a man enjoys one only, but a woman enjoys the full 10 parts. Which sex is more sexual? Controversial. Looking into it, in our own time, the Victorian idea that the right kind of women have but little sensual desire still persists in stereotypes about female sexuality being limited to delicate hand grazing. In 1973, Permissive Cosmopolitan magazine ran an article by a male psychiatrist who announced, "Women do not have sexual fantasies. How do we know? Ask a woman, and she will usually reply, no." Good work, doctor. Incredible research.
Wow, that's amazing. Brilliant. Yeah, totally great research there. This is actually a really good subject to talk about. Today is International Women's Day. Shout out to the ladies out there. I think this is actually a good topic to discuss, sort of the way that women are treated and how society shaped women to be. It's really sad that we're just kind of like in this notion like that women shouldn't or can't enjoy sexual pleasure just for the sheer sake of enjoying it. Definitely as Neogenians, we believe that anybody can enjoy sexual pleasure if they do so, and as long as they, express it consensually and safely, it's good. Go for it. And there's really no concept of being a slut or a whore or anything like that, because for Neogenians, there's really no concept of being a good, pure girl anyway. So it's like, it's really just kind of a non-issue. It's like, you like sex, you have it. If you don't like it, don't.
Methods. This kind of statement is a self-fulfilling prophecy. When the experts announce that women do not have sexual fantasies, women whose experience tells them otherwise feel deviant.
I think it was even Socrates. Was it Socrates or was it Pythagoras even? Who had the thing? Was it Socrates? Who did the wandering womb? Oh, it's by Plato. Plato adhered to the theory of the wandering womb, and it was this silly notion that literally like the womb would wander around the body. Let's see. Hello? 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 Oh, it made me download something. I don't want to read that. Oh my god, I ain't reading all that. What in the world? Oh, so the word hysteria derives from the Greek hysteria, uterus. From this derived the Hippocratic theory that hysteria was caused by the uterus wandering about the woman's body as a free organ, and hysteria was thus limited to women, and it was not considered to be a mental disease. Plato adhered somewhat to this theory and wrote in the Timaeus that the uterus becoming angry at at remaining unfruitful, wandered through the body and closed up the passages of the breath, and by obstructing respiration, caused all varieties of disease. It's just great research there, men. Great research there. You know, we love the ancient Greek philosophers and stuff. We love the ancient Greeks, but holy shit, they had some dumb ideas too. Cassie's like, I'm sorry, I can't clean the house right now. My uterus is in my neck. Mine's in my ass. Anyways, moving on.
And abnormal, which makes them reluctant to speak up. Seemingly descriptive statements about sexuality, like women do not have sexual fantasies, often serve to enforce the very situation they claim to describe. The Cartland—
Oh my god, growing up religious, like the idea of like having sexual fantasies, and they tried to raise me as a girl, so it's so weird because like I grew up with brothers, and there was definitely more tolerance and acceptance of like the idea of boys having sexual fantasies. It's like, okay, yes, you have those, so you know, you just have to, you know, manage them. But like the idea of like me, you know, them trying to raise me as a girl, saying like it was the idea like it was extra wrong and gross for a girl to have sexual fantasies. So when I did start to have sexual like fantasies, start to think that way, I immediately thought like, oh no, God knows exactly what I'm thinking, and I'm like a dirty, like nasty, like just psychotic person, you know? Like they really make you feel like you're mentally demented, like if you are a girl and you have sexual fantasies. It's like, actually, it's like, oh, we can understand the boys doing that, it's natural, but girls, no, that's unheard of. That's just really unnatural and weird. And so it's really interesting to like deal with that growing up. Now I don't care, like especially like since becoming Neogenian, like I have like no guilt or anything. I watch porno, I masturbate, whatever, like I just don't care.
Collins' debate was echoed 25 years later in debates about Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey, with 50 Shades widely condemned as mommy porn, which, come on people, moms have pornography. It's like once a decade, society collectively discovers that women's sexuality exists and everyone loses their minds. Stephenie Meyer, like Barbara Cartland, is something of a neo-Victorian, or at least a neo-Edwardian. Boo! Stephenie is not as moralizing as Barbara Cartland, but she has said, for example, erotica is not something I read. I don't even read traditional romance. Why not? It's too smutty. There's a reason my books have a lot of innocence. That's the sort of world I live in. Well, I support whatever Stephenie Meyer has to tell herself to sleep at night. I don't know that I would describe Twilight as a world of innocence.
Yeah, Twilight is not a world of innocence for sure. Yeah, I don't like, sex is sex. Like everybody does it. Well, not everybody, you know. Shout out to the asexuals out there. And we love you.
People before. I like watching you sleep.
It's hard to say with all those clothes on. Stranger things happen every day.
Woo!
Trust me.
But it's true that there are no sex scenes. It's strictly PG-13.
In the books.
In one scene, Bella is too embarrassed to look at lingerie because it's too sexy even when it isn't on. In a now infamous scene, Bella walks down the stairs in a long khaki skirt and blue blouse, which outfit Edward describes as utterly indecent. No one should look so tempting, it's not fair. So what did Robert Pattinson mean when he said that Twilight is Stephenie Meyer's sexual fantasy?
You're like reading her sort of sexual fantasy.
A story can be sexy without sex scenes. How? Well, I feel like this is something that I should show and not tell. For example, can we talk about the cuck tent scene? Why is no one talking about the cuck tent scene?
I haven't really seen the movies. I think I've seen the first one, but the cuck tent scene? What's the cuck tent
In
scene?
Twilight Episode 3, Eclipse, Bella and her polycule of monster men are taking the ring to Mordor when a winter storm rolls in. Bella is in the tent and she's shivering her innocent little butt off, and Edward's upset because vampires have no body heat, so he can't warm her up.
Oh,
but
no.
Jacob is right outside, and Jacob is a toasty dog boy with a
What?
canonical body temperature of 108.9 degrees Fahrenheit.
Let's face it, I am hotter than you.
So
he's saying that in more ways than one. What is this really a scene? Okay. Honestly, now I want to watch the movies. I don't want to spend time reading the books, but now I want to watch the movies.
Edward agrees to let the sexy, shirtless Jacob share a sleeping bag with Bella to prevent her imminent death by freezing.
You'll warm up soon. Faster if you took your clothes off.
Jacob clutches Bella against his hot, naked chest while Edward gazes on.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know that. But like, I've only read the first book and I've seen the first movie. I haven't like gotten into the like. I get like where it was going, but it's like, what is this scene? Just walks in the tent. I'm hotter than you. And like every scene of Jacob that they show, he's taking his shirt off or unbuttoning his pants. Like the kid's a fucking like Calvin Klein ad.
In jealous agony, Bella is nestled in Jacob's arms, pretending to be asleep, while the two gorgeous monster men are incandescent with desire for her. They argue through the night about who loves her more and who can take better care of her. And remember, Edward can read minds, so he's experiencing all of Jacob's perverted fantasies in excruciating detail.
Can you at least attempt to control your thoughts?
So, why does this scene happen? Wherefore art the cuck tent? This is not a trick question. The answer is very obvious. The cuck tent happens because Stephenie Meyer thinks it's hot. Because it is hot. And maybe Stephenie would deny that she has any such impure feelings since she lives in a world of innocence. But let's use common sense. This is a sexual fantasy.
Almost everything that went into Twilight was unconscious.
A lot of women like to feel intensely desired. It's why a common feminine fantasy is being at the center of attention from multiple men, because more men symbolizes more desire. It's why you get romance novels like 2 Billionaires in Vegas, 3 Bosses Assistant, 4 Rancher's Bride, 5 Mafia Captors Virgin, 6 Single Dad's Nanny, 7 Groomsmen from Hell, 8 Brothers Fiancé, 9 Marines Shared Property, 10 Mountain Men's Baby, and Wuthering Heights. It's a really straightforward example of what is called wish fulfillment. And Twilight has a lot of wish fulfillment. You know, Bella moves to a new school, and even though she's an awkward tomboy who drives a rusty pickup truck, every boy in school has a crush on her.
It's like first grade all over again. You're the shiny new toy.
2 gorgeous monster boys fight over Bella, and they carry her around, and they tell her how much they love her and want to protect her. All the other girls are jealous of my cool boyfriend, so by association, I must be cool too. If you're a Twilight reader and you identify with Bella, these are exciting fantasies to have, because they gratify what Dr. Father calls His Majesty the Ego, the hero of every daydream and every story.
Well, the ego's good, you know, as long as you have a healthy ego. It is the mediator of all the parts and facets of you.
All of this, I think, is pretty obvious, but where things get controversial, and to many people disturbing, is when you start introducing darker themes into your romantic wish fulfillment fantasies. Edward's stalking.
I like watching you sleep.
The fact that he's self-admittedly a dangerous predator.
I'm the world's most dangerous predator.
His struggle with a vampiric desire to kill Bella and drink her blood. People see this stuff and they think, oh my god, this is masochistic, it's internalized misogyny, it's...
Yeah, but why is masochism so natural? You know what I mean? I have thoughts.
It's abusive, it's pathological, but I think that those concerns, while understandable, come from a misunderstanding of how fantasy works. Consider, for example, the ultimate problematic fantasy, the fantasy of non-consent, what we could euphemistically call a ravishment fantasy.
Oh.
This fantasy of being overpowered or...
I got that. I like to be ravished. I like ravishment. It doesn't mean I like to be humiliated, but or hurt, but I like to be ravished.
In bondage or surrendering to a dominant lover. It's a very common fantasy for a lot of women and also a lot of people who aren't women. It's the reason bodice rippers are called bodice rippers.
Bodice rippers? Ugh. Bodice rippers? Yes, I love it.
They were notorious for these ravishment scenes where bodices are, ripped. And this can be difficult to talk about because, we worry that the worst men in the universe will take these fantasies as proof that women really want to be dominated by violent men. But abusive men will use any pretext to justify their behavior, and that's not on us, it's on them. So let's talk about it. In 1973, the same year that Cosmo announced—
Yes, it's true. Like, women and other people than women, do have fantasies of ravishment, but that does not equal to hey, it's not like putting a sign over your head saying, hey, come abuse me, right? I think there's definitely some men out there that think that's how it works. Like, they think that's what they want. Some gross, violent guys having their own fantasies. They think that's the kind of women they want, but they're severely misunderstanding the fantasy. And when it's too hot to bother with, just rip everything off.
Women don't have sexual fantasies, the author Nancy Friday published a book called My Secret Garden: Women's Sexual Fantasies. Nancy Friday was a heroine of the sexual revolution, and I think it was brave of her to publish this book. Despite its misleadingly twee cover and blurb, dare to discover the beautiful blossoms, the winding paths, and the hidden nooks of female sexuality. I hate that even the cover of a pervert book like this assumes that female sexuality is as mysterious as it is floral. Groundbreaking. But there's—
Why is that? Why is it whenever, like, people talk about, like, women's, like, sexuality or sensuality or desire, why is it always likened to some sort of flower or garden or rose? Like, what the hell is happening there? My sexuality isn't a rose garden. It's a fucking, like, enchanted forest of dildos.
There's nothing floral about the contents of Nancy Friday's books, which are essentially anthologies of fantasies submitted in response to a newspaper ad Nancy published that said, "Female sexual fantasies, wanted by serious female researcher. Anonymity guaranteed." Love that. This resulted in a book which is very explicit and which challenges assumptions about feminine sexuality being sort of soft and gentle and mushy. The single greatest theme that emerged was that of weak women being sexually dominated, forced by male strength to do this deliciously awful thing.
I mean, that's the role I like to play in bed. I mean, not necessarily like as a woman, because I'm non-binary, but I like to be the dominated. I am like, I've said this before, I'm like the subbiest sub that ever subbed. It doesn't mean I can't do that for like another partner. Like if another partner wants me to dominate that, yeah, I can do that. I'm not very great at it, but I'll give it a go, But it just naturally, I don't know, just kind of like to be overtaken, overpowered, directed, but in a very like nurturing way. Less of a, I mean, you can get rough, sure, but it's gotta be from a place of care and a place of trust. I do like a little pain. Not a lot. Not to the point of, like, penetrating skin and, like, stuff like that. But, I like my butt smacked, I like spankings. I like candle wax. I like nipple clamps. The good stuff.
So the ravishment fantasy proved to be the most common fantasy. Why? Are these women all horribly traumatized? Is this internalized misogyny? Well, maybe, but there's other explanations to consider. Women are kind of socialized not to display sexuality openly, not to initiate. Being a proper feminine woman—
Oh, that's another thought I'm just thinking about, how, like, some people think that women who do have sexual desires, sexual fantasies, or promiscuous or whatever, or sexually expressive, some people say that it must come from a place of like trauma. Like at some point, women were distorted in their sexuality. And perhaps in some cases that's true, but not all, you know? Definitely not all.
Is supposed to involve being passive and modest, or else women risk being recast from Madonna to whore, good girl to slut, and being victimized and degraded as a result. So it makes sense that a lot of women might be very protective of their innocent good girl self-image, even in fantasy. The non-consent fantasy is a device that absolves the woman from blame. If she's being forced, then it's not her fault. Ravishment is a ruse, as Nancy Friday says, quote,
that makes so much sense. Actually, that makes sense as to why I like it. It's like growing up religious was never really permitted to explore sexuality, so when I put myself in a place where another partner is like making the decisions for me, then it kind of makes it more palatable for me to explore that side of me. That makes a lot of sense. I just learned something about myself.
A deus ex machina we roll in to catapult us past a lifetime of women's rules against sex. The women whom I've interviewed don't really want to be hurt or humiliated. His male presence, that effective battering ram, neatly makes her relax sufficiently to enjoy, and then allows her to return to Earth, her nice girl, good daughter self intact. So the non-consent fantasy is not wish fulfillment in a literal sense, but in an emotional sense. Like if a teenage boy...
I don't know if it's good or bad that I'm starting to realize there's a lot of religious trauma intertwined with my sexual life.
Fantasizes about dying gloriously in battle? Is that a masochistic fantasy about death? Or is it an egotistical fantasy about glory? Probably the latter. Likewise, women who fantasize about being ravished do not actually want to be assaulted. In a fantasy, which is a fictional scenario where you are in control, the non-consent situation satisfies your emotional needs. To gratify desire without the burden of shame and guilt and anxiety that comes with taking responsibility for your desire. Another vampire novelist, Anne Rice, said of her own sadomasochistic erotica series, the books aren't about literal cruelty, they're about surrender, the fun of imagining you have no choice but to enjoy sex. The essential point is this: fantasies are not literal wishes. Fantasies construct situations where emotional needs are met and inhibitions to pleasure are removed.
Yeah. Fantasy is definitely shadow exploration and shadow expression. I think, you know, when you write a story, when you draw something, and it doesn't even really have to do with sexual fantasies, but it's expressing something that you cannot otherwise do in your everyday life, and it's something you can control and write out. So people will write out, you know, terrible tragedies, unrequited loves, things like that, dangerous loves, horrors. You know, when you write a script for a horror movie, I mean, you write some of the most insane psychopathic characters that do horrible things to people, but just because you write that doesn't mean you're interested in those things, right? But it's sort of a shadow expression. It's expressing the shadow of humanity into a fantasy. It's shadow work. It's a way to do shadow work. Hello, Shadow Dragon. Yeah, fantasy is shadow work, I would agree. Man, we're only an hour through this. I don't know if we're going to get through this whole video tonight. We might have to do another part tomorrow. We might get halfway through this and do the second half tomorrow. And have like an extra stream day. We'll see though. Let's keep going.
So for example, in a fantasy where the dangerous alpha male is the aggressor, the woman remains innocent. The bad boy is bad so that the good girl gets to stay good. We could call this disavowal, the process of constructing fantasy situations where your desires are gratified without having to assert or even having to acknowledge the desire. Non-consent fantasies are one ruse of disavowal, but fantasy is infinitely creative in constructing these devices. Remember the cuck tent. Bella's a good girl who would never consider having a threesome, but it's dangerously cold. I guess we have no choice but to huddle for warmth. Disavowal. Me and Draco got detention in the Forbidden Forest, and we had to camp out for the night, but there was only one sleeping bag. Guess we have to share it. There's a million
That's like every porno script.
Fiction and erotica tropes that are basically variations on this ruse of disavowal.
It's like the classic porno like thing where it's like, oh, the guy's here. Hello, Mr. Pizza Man. Hello, sexy lady. Oh no, I don't have any money. Well, that's really bad. Oh, but I don't know what to do. Well, there's some other way you can pay. And then, wow, oh no. I guess that's not really a disavowal. Kind of. Lee says I wanted to be a porno director growing up. That would be amazing.
For example, sex pollen, aliens made them do it. Hypnosis, mind control, non-consent, dubious consent, mate or die, pon far, forced feminization, Hermione is an omega in heat, and Draco is the only nearby alpha. The continued popularity of these tropes demonstrates to me that erotic disavowal fantasies are not just a relic of a past age of bodice rippers and sexual conservatism. I don't think that women today are much more liberated than Nancy Friday and Anne Rice. Like, where are these liberated women? Maybe in Europe? Look, I don't know what goes on over there in Pervoslavia, but here in America, we still believe in a little thing called sexual repression. Like, if you look through fanfiction platforms like Wattpad and AO3 that host erotica mostly by women, submissive fantasies are still pretty standard. My mom sold my virginity to One Direction. I also see disavowal at work in the infamous rescue fantasies in Twilight. Bella is walking the street alone at night when she's menaced by a gang of thugs apparently ready for a bit of the old ultra-violence. But at the last minute, Edward sweeps in his battle Volvo and saves the damsel. Likewise, at the end of the first movie, there's a snuff film scene where the evil vampire James intends to suck Bella's blood and make some kind of smut film out of it to torture Edward with. This very eroticized violence is interrupted at the last moment when Edward replaces the assailant and Bella is rescued instead of ravished.
You can try to suck the venom out. No, I won't be able to stop. Find the wheel.
I see this as a kind of double disavowal. It's a non-consent fantasy that's transformed into something more morally acceptable. A rescue fantasy. Rescued damsels are a common erotic myth. In the story of Perseus and Andromeda, Andromeda is a naked woman in bondage, threatened by a monster, but saved at the last minute by Perseus thrusting into the rescue with some kind of phallic weapon. In rescue fantasies, the thrilling possibility of sexual violence is raised only to be disavowed at the last minute by the rescue. But it's not just women who disavow desire. The rescue fantasy is also appealing from the perspective of Perseus, who gets to feel strong and important and heroic, while also, getting to spend time around a naked woman in chains. It's not even necessarily sexual desire that fantasy disavows. In 50 Shades of Grey, Edward, renamed Christian, is constantly issuing orders to Bella, renamed Anastasia, about what she should eat, what car she should drive, about what gynecologist to see. Why is this part of the fantasy? Well, because making decisions is hard. Sartre said we're condemned to be free. Why is freedom a condemnation? Well, because freedom implies responsibility, and responsibility sucks. I, for one, hate being accountable for the consequences of my actions. Even something as trivial as what should I eat today is a decision fraught with moral quandaries and body image issues and contradictory nutritional advice coming at us from all angles? Isn't there something relaxing about a competent person just telling you what to do so you don't have to worry about it? Disavowal is a useful ruse for indulging in all kinds of guilty pleasures. In 50 Shades, Christian is constantly lavishing extravagant gifts on...
I've never read or seen 50 Shades of Grey, but after this, I'm kind of curious just to like watch the movie.
Anna. He buys her a computer, a car, first-class plane tickets, and Anna constantly protests because she knows that it's gauche to accept expensive gifts from your billionaire boyfriend like some kind of kept woman. But Christian insists, oh well, I guess I have no choice but to fly first class. The function of disavowal in fantasy is that you get what you want without the indignity of having to ask for it, or even against your will. In Twilight, Bella hates birthday parties and presents, but they're lavished on her anyway. Edward's fashionista sister Alice is always feminizing Bella, ordering her to wear high heels. And Bella's like, no, stop. I wear flannel and drive pickup trucks. I'm totally butch. But clearly, she's into this forced feminization, this de-butching. Bella is adamant she doesn't want a fancy wedding, but Alice insists, so there's a fancy wedding. Obviously, Stephanie wanted there to be a fancy wedding, but you know what people say about women who want fancy weddings. Divas, bridezillas, not a cute look.
Right.
So thanks to Alice, Bella gets
right, because yeah, that's such an interesting observation, because like there is the fancy wedding thing going on here, and it would be weird for Bella's character to suddenly just be into bridezilla mode and be like, I want a fancy wedding and this, that. It would kind of like ruin her like character. Like it would take away from like the actual core of her character of who she is. So of course they would introduce this other character that sort of in a way forces her to do this. So she's it's not really her decision. It just kind of happens because that character would never want that to begin with. But it's something desired within the fantasy. Interesting. Hello, Macromonius. I keep wanting to say macrame. Hello, macrame. In the corner with a plant in it.
To have a fancy wedding without the indignity of having to want a fancy wedding. Now I want to talk about one of the most controversial things that happens in Twilight, Jacob imprinting on Renesmee. Okay, so I can't wait to explain this one. Stephanie introduces into werewolf lore the notion of imprinting, a kind of lifelong limerent fixation. It's soulmates, basically. In Breaking Dawn, Bella gives birth to a vampiric baby whom she names Renesmee. Yes, it's very funny. Let's all laugh. So Bella essentially dies in childbirth, and before she's resurrected, Jacob decides to murder Renesmee, the baby, as revenge for killing Bella. But when Jacob sees Renesmee, he imprints on her, the baby, essentially falling in love with this infant. Now, I think this is amazing, but everyone else seems to hate it.
You imprinted on my daughter?
It wasn't my choice.
She's a baby!
Why would Stephanie write such a thing? I think Jacob imprints on Renesmee because Stephanie is unconsciously both Team Edward and Team Jacob.
Almost everything that went into Twilight was unconscious.
I mean, it's not that subtle.
You can love more than one person at a time.
Don't make me choose.
But obviously Bella can't be polyamorous because Stephanie's books have a lot of innocence. That's the sort of world she lives.
Yeah, I like how we keep going back to the fact that Stephanie Meyer is like, I don't really read romance novels. I don't really think about this stuff. There's some innocence to my books. And I'm not even really thinking about it. I'm doing this all unconsciously. Like, woman, this is your shadow. Like, especially if you grew up Mormon, like, oh my God, this is your shadow, lady. This is like repressed Mormon sexuality coming out in her books.
In. So imprinting on Renesmee allows Bella to secure monogamous ties to both Edward through marriage and to Jacob vicariously through her own daughter, thus roping Jacob into this subtextually polyamorous family.
We're all gonna be together now.
So should I start calling you Dad?
Wow, is that how it all ends? Really? That's dumb.
I'm not saying you have to like it. I'm just saying that's why this happens, probably. So I've been arguing that a lot of fantasies work by constructing situations where your desires are both fulfilled and disavowed. But there's more to it than just that. If we consider the more problematic aspects of Twilight, Edward's—
Oh shit, I forgot my laundry. Hold on. Ugh, okay, we're good. Crisis averted. Okay. Moving on.
Stalking, his violent urges, the ravishment turned rescue fantasies. The appeal is not just that it absolves the Bella-identified reader of the responsibility and slut stigma of sexuality. There's also something about the intensity and even the violence of a fantasy lover's desire that is exciting. There's a book by the psychoanalyst Michael Bader called Arousal: The Secret Logic of Sexual Fantasies that I really enjoyed, which surprised me because I found it in the psychology section between Why Is My Marriage Bad and Help, My Teenager is a Piece of Shit. Bader's book takes a very optimistic view of sexual fantasy. Quote, I do not think sexuality is driven by
Yeah, I mean, like, you could not like Twilight, and I don't care for it, obviously, but there is a point where it does have, like, very basic archetypes and story structure that has been a part of humanity since humanity was born. I mean, like, this is just kind of deep-seated in the core of everyone's psyche to some degree.
Kinky desires. I think that it is driven by straightforward desires for pleasure and safety. Kinkiness is merely the complicated route that some people need to take in order to safely feel pleasure. According to Bader, fantasy is a tool for overcoming guilt, shame, anxiety, responsibility, and other obstacles to pleasure and arousal.
Sounds like shadow work to me. A way to express yourself without the guilt, and shame of whatever it is you're interested in. That is shadow work, 100% through and through. And it is a healthy way to express your shadow as well. Writing stories, creating stories, things like that. Fantasies.
Like Freud said,
as long as you are, rationally aware that it's fantasy, like, you're all set.
The sexual instinct has to struggle against certain mental forces which act as resistances, dams upon sexual development: disgust, shame, and morality. Fantasy functions—
Lee says guilt can be exciting, but that's probably too dark. Well, it can be, but also there's the whole point of guilty pleasure. Like, everybody has a guilty pleasure, right? Do you all want to share your guilty pleasures? For the longest time, my guilty pleasure was, like, pop music, because I felt like I was kind of in a demographic of kids where, like, they were in more alternative styled music and stuff like that, and I'm like, very secretly listening to Britney Spears, feeling very guilty about it, you know, and secretive about it. That's just like a light thing. It could be like something more light or like something deeper, but yeah, like people have guilty pleasures. Guilty and pleasure in the same description there.
To break through the dam, to rip the metaphorical bodice.
The bodice.
In the Cinderella fantasy, where a billionaire falls for you, an ordinary brunette,
and Cassie, yeah. Cassie, I know you have a lot of that kind of experience too. Cassie, you know, used to be involved with somebody who would shame her for listening to the bands she likes, and is like, no, that band's stupid. Like, why are you listening to that band? It's so stupid. It's like, I don't know, because I like it. Fuck off. You rock, Cassie, by the way. And your taste in music is amazing.
Attention of this powerful man functions as a proof of your worth, of your desirability. It's fundamentally a shame-negating fantasy. It's satisfying because most people have shame, have insecurities. We feel too old, too fat, too trans, too disabled. It's always something, right? Or maybe you were neglected.
It's always something, right? Lee says, I love Nickelback. Is that a guilty pleasure? Yeah. There's a lot of people hate Nickelback, and so it's a like kind of in pop culture like a shameful thing to like. So honestly, Nickelback really isn't that bad. Like, I don't listen to them, but like when I do hear their songs, I'm like, it's really not that big of a deal, you know? Like, it's not that bad. Nora says opera. Love opera. So many other genres of music, but if you mention to opera, listen to it, like certain people around, they'll make fun of it. Oh, that's sad. I'm trying to think of something that's like a guilty pleasure of mine. It kind of gets harder. Like, the more I've been Neogenian, like, the less I feel like I have secretive guilty pleasures, which is a good thing. But then also it's like, I don't know. I kind of like to have secret vices. You know, it's like your own secret.
Neglected as a child, or your sibling was always more beautiful and successful.
Oh, I know. I watched one, like, years ago, I think like 10 years, seriously, 10 years ago, I watched 3 seasons of Jersey Shore, and I liked it. It was so entertaining and funny to me, and I couldn't tell anybody because everyone's like, oh, the Jersey Shore is such a shitty fucking trash toilet tube show. And it is! And I'm like, that's why I like it. This is the shittiest, trashiest show, and I like it. I need more. Cassie's guilty pleasure is singing loudly and poorly in the car. You don't sing poorly. Turn people into toads.
Than you, or you feel underappreciated at work, or your YouTube videos don't get as many views as H-Bomber Guy. Whatever the source of the insecurity, this shame is a dam, an inhibition, an obstacle to pleasure. It's hard to get excited when you feel inadequate, unattractive, or ordinary. But in the eyes of this fantasy billionaire or vampire who's obsessed with you, you become extraordinary. The fantasy creates a situation where your insecurities are proven false, or in which your flaws turn out to be desirable, which negates the shame that inhibits pleasure. A feminist objection to 50 Shades might go, why does it have to be a rich husband? Why can't...
It's probably when I wrote stories and stuff with friends, like in high school, we always wrote our characters with like the perfect like counterparts and mates, because it's like we wanted to like live that fantasy of like, I guess where we were desirable because we didn't feel desirable. Cassie, you know what I'm talking about. Up top. There we go. Okay.
Women fantasize about financial independence? Well, because that completely misunderstands the emotional logic of the fantasy. It's not really about the money. Money is just an efficient symbol. It signifies value, worth. In the logic of fantasy, a rich man is a high-value man, especially to us vulgar Americans. To an old-fashioned English woman like Barbara Cartland, the ideal romantic hero is preferably a peer of the realm, a disgraceful duke, a wicked marquis, an elusive earl. In desperate times, we might even settle
an elusive earl
for a cruel count. When his lordship bestows upon you lavish gifts, despite your protests and disavowals, the gifts are proof that he desires you, that you are as enticing as any beautiful, expensive object. The wealth and gifts are of secondary importance. First, we seek the refutation of our shame, the validation of our desirability, and above all, proof that we are loved. Often this type of fantasy involves a competitive element too, where rivals, usually other women, must be eliminated. This is taken to embarrassing extremes in 50 Shades of Grey, where Christian surrounds himself with what Anna refers to as immaculate blondes and Stepford wives. Young blonde women whom Christian employs precisely because he's not attracted to any of them. Christian only being attracted to superficially ordinary and awkward brunettes who remind him of, and this is a direct quotation, the crack whore, my birth mother.
Oh shit. What in the Freudian fuck? What in the Freudian fuck?
Anna also has the satisfaction of humiliating the attractive blonde architect Christian hires to design their house, and at one point she throws a drink in the face of Christian's childhood seductress, who, yes, is also blonde.
He's not capable of marriage.
In Twilight, Bella is a superficial—
The old martini glass in the face. Gotta love it. I've always wanted to do that to somebody. Just in a rich, fancy party, they say some smart-ass shit, and I'm just like, shwa. You don't even really have to toss it that hard. Just like a little swirl and a shwa. Just shasha.
ordinary and awkward brunette who is frequently jealous of Edward's blonde bombshell sister Rosalie, as well as the Denali coven of vampires, blonde vixen Zal, to whom we are assured Edward feels not the slightest twinge of attraction. My point is that this need in fantasy to cancel out every other attractive woman has the same meaning Anna Freud attributed to a female patient's fantasy. Father loves only me. And the fact that the men in these fantasies are often substitute father figures is a fact so obvious that it hardly warrants mentioning.
I know. I look hot.
When it comes to like the Freudian sort of like the seed of all our problems is like, for women, like the seed of like some psychology in them is issues with their father, and for men, their mothers. I'm highly critical of that, and I think I would hope that soon becomes outdated. It doesn't, I don't know. It's like something that I feel like Freud just kind of takes and tries to like apply to everything. Like, yep, this fits for everything, so therefore it works. It's like, does it though? Does it?
Feminine sexual fantasies are often modeled on myths and fairy tales. Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, Little Red Riding Hood, Hades and Persephone, Adam and Eve, Perseus and Andromeda. If Cinderella-style fantasies are usually about refuting shame, I'd argue that Beauty and the Beast-style fantasies are usually about negating guilt. By Beauty and the Beast-style fantasies, I mean erotic fantasies where the hero is a mafia boss, a stalker, a pirate, an abusive employer, a conduct-violating professor, a disgraceful duke, a sadistic billionaire, or for that matter, my own brother, a goddamn shit-sucking vampire.
My own brother, a goddamn shit-sucking vampire!
Obviously, in Twilight, as in a lot of romance fiction, the hero is both Prince Charming and the Beast, a Darcy with Heathcliff characteristics. What is the fantasy appeal of the Beast? why is he so sexy? Well, there's an element of selfishness inherent to sexuality, what Michael Bader calls ruthlessness. Quote, sexual excitement requires that we momentarily become selfish and turn away from concerns about the other's pleasure in order to surrender to our own. Women in particular often feel guilty about being selfish. They're afraid they'll take too long, or that receiving pleasure is one-sided. Maybe it's because women are told to be caretakers, to put other people's needs before their own. But in the fantasy where you've been tied up by Christian Grey, you have no say in the matter. You cannot be guilty because it's not your fault, and the selfishness of the beast gives Beauty permission to be selfish too, to surrender to her own pleasure. Bader says, quote, sexual fantasies always find a way of turning the no of guilt into the yes of pleasure. A similar guilt negation is achieved by fantasies of anonymity, a masked stranger, someone you have—
See, this is my favorite dark romance, is the Phantom of the Opera, between the Phantom and Christine. Yeah, I like the sort of like French, like I like the French book originally. It's all right. There's the musical, which is, yeah, okay, I like that. I do like that. That is a guilty pleasure. I do like the opera. There's a specific book that's like my favoriteest book in the world. It's about the Phantom of the Opera, but like from the time he was born up until like the opera house, and it's called Phantom by Susan Kay, and it is a really fucking dark romance. Because the Phantom is, even though you go through like his perspective of his upbringing and stuff like that, he's not somebody you should really be rooting for, but you feel like you want to. Like you sort of like fall in love with this person who's actually really fucking crazy. And a lot of people don't realize too that in the book, like the Phantom is like old, like really fucking old, and Christine is only 16. And in the book too, by Susan Kay, his biggest fascination with Christine is that she looks damn near identical to his mother, who completely rejected him as a baby because he was born disfigured. So interesting, but I still love it. Phantom is my favorite. I love Phantom so much.
Have no obligation to take care of, and because you're strangers to each other, you also have less reason to be ashamed. It's why when you have an orgy at your opulent mansion, you have to make everyone wear a mask. Like anonymity, opulence is a defense against shame. When someone—
That's my fantasy. I want to go to like one of those weird parties that looks like this weird, maybe not so culty, but just like weird like mass parties where people are just like having orgies, but I don't want to participate in the orgies. I just want to like take one of those like fancy binoculars and like look. Only it's not binoculars, it's kaleidoscopes, and I'm enjoying a light show. Anyways, I've actually never seen Eyes Wide Shut. I've never seen Eyes Wide Shut. I've never seen 50 Shades of Grey. I've only seen one Twilight movie.
When someone surrounds themselves with opulence, what are they trying to say about themselves? The subliminal message of opulence is I am valuable, I am desirable. It's why so many romantic and erotic fantasies take place.
Oh, Laura, that's cool. You said you found the book on Amazon and added it. It's the one by Susan Kay, right? You got to get that author specifically. It's like, it literally is my most favorite book in the world. In fact, I think Cassie has my copy right now. Cassie, I want that back.
In opulent settings. Now, in reality, the ruthlessness enabled by fantasy eventually conflicts with our desire to be loved. A paradox of sexuality is that ruthlessness must somehow be balanced with tenderness. If you only use and objectify your partner, there can be no love. But if you're overly anxious about your partner's needs to the exclusion of your own, the flame of desire will go out. In sex, there is such a thing as not enough selfishness. This is my theory about the gentle rogue. He's appealing because he's both gentle and a rogue. I am very smart. The gentle rogue is a sort of vegetarian vampire.
He is both gentle and a rogue. These concepts are very deep here, okay? I'm smart.
Capable of both ruthlessness and tenderness. So from the perspective of Nancy Friday and Michael Bader, sexual fantasies, even ones that seem violent and disturbing, can be understood as psychological devices that lead us to pleasure through the labyrinth of guilt and shame. I wish that people who are inclined to crusade against dangerous books or abusive ships would try to think about fantasy in a way that...
You know, this is kind of making me think twice about, you know how there's the whole Harley Quinn and Joker fantasy that, like, a lot of people are into, you know? They're like, oh, I'm Harley Quinn and I'm looking for my Joker. And it's like everyone knows that that's, like, a really fucking awful, terrible, abusive relationship. But it's still clearly a fantasy, so it's like... I don't know what it is like people are desiring within that, but I think it's likened unto this. In fact, I'm surprised it hasn't really been mentioned yet. It's just in reference to like the Joker and Harley Quinn. I mean, I don't like it, but you know, should I really judge others if they do like it? If they're aware that it's a fantasy and that they just like that as like a shadow expression and they're not actually into having a relationship like that? No, Spectral, that's not what I mean, but thank you. I get what you mean, though. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it. Anyways.
It's less literal and more psychological. Like, do furries and Omegaverse fic writers normalize bestiality? No. The fantasy of human animality is not about literal animals. It's about unleashing what is symbolically animalistic in us, the drives and urges that human taboos and decency forbid. People think furries are weird now, but your grandfather fought in World War II, then came home and thought it was totally normal to be attracted to women dressed like rabbits. Are people who are into daddy doms or diapers or whatever literally normalizing pediatrics? Well, no. It's usually not about that at all. Age play is usually about fantasy regression to the social position of someone who has no responsibilities and needs to be taken care of. The fantasy or the roleplay scenario gives you permission to be taken care of. Edward Cullen's notorious "I like to watch you sleep"
I like watching you sleep
feels creepy to a lot of people. And fair enough. Creepiness is subjective, but I feel like you can find Edward creepy and still understand that for Stephenie Meyer, Twilight is not an expression of a literal desire to be stalked by creatures of the night. The fantasy is of a protector watching over you, a witness, a guardian angel. Like when you're a kid and you want your mom to stay in your room with you until you fall asleep. I wish that I could fall asleep with a vampire watching over me, talking to me, and she's saying, "Baby, mommy loves you. You're a good baby. I don't blame you for what happened to this family. You're just a baby. You had nothing to do with 9/11. In 2015, radical feminist Dr. Gail Dines, the quote, world's leading anti-pornography scholar and activist, according to her website, led a boycott of 50 Shades of Grey using the hashtag $50 not 50 shades, encouraging people to donate to battered women's shelters instead of seeing the movie. Dines claimed 50 Shades glamorized and eroticized violence against women and rebranded it as romance. She describes going to see the movie in a theater full of young women drinking cocktails and watching in abject horror, quote, a film that depicted in unbearable detail how to lure a lonely, isolated child into consenting to sexual abuse. Watching a seasoned predator toy with his immature prey, you are left with a knot in the pit of your stomach that won't go away, no matter how many cocktails you down. Gail? It's Twilight fanfiction. When I watch 50 Shades, I don't feel like I'm watching a seasoned predator. I feel like I'm watching a woman's fantasy. Because I am. And if people like Gail Dines are too obtuse to notice the difference, that's kind of their problem. I've been holding this in for 10 years, and I'm gonna say it. I am begging these people to learn to think psychologically instead of literally.
Yes.
So they're not constantly baffled and traumatized upon encountering literally the most common type of sexual fantasy that people have.
Yes, shadow expression and fantasy should be thought about psychologically, not literally. It's not literal. I love this. I love it. That's such a good point.
I guess when your only analytic tool is a sledgehammer, you see every problem as an author whose legs aren't hobbled yet. It's frustrating, because there's plenty of more nuanced criticism of pornography, especially when it's produced coercively or when it functions as a replacement for actual sex education. But I reject the radical feminist idea that consuming pornography is a major cause of violence. And I should know, because I'm a very violent person, and I never consume pornography. I guess I also need to address that for every radical feminist who thinks that Twilight fanfiction is literally violence, there's also 1,000 misogynistic idiots who will argue that dark romance fantasies prove that women really want to be dominated by abusive alpha males. Which, no, stop. No. Fantasizing about sexy vampires doesn't make you a willing victim any more than fantasizing about torpedoing a car holding up traffic makes you a murderer. I fantasize about Mario Kart shelling bad drivers all the time. It doesn't mean I literally want bloodshed on the New Jersey Turnpike. Unless they're asking for it. As Zarathustra spake,
we have a name, a perfect name for fantasy realized. It's called nightmare.
Our violent and twisted fantasies are unconscious solutions to the problem of anxiety. And really, we're all just seeking pleasure in
fantasies are the solutions to anxiety. Interesting.
Safety. So probably it's fine, right? It's fine. A little bit of healthy sadism never hurt anyone.
Yes! Yes, please talk about power. Oh, yes, sadism, masochism. This is an interesting conversation. Fuck yes, I'm excited for this. Now we're really gonna get deep and psychological into the unconsciousness of humanity and the natural archetypes we have within us. The natural play and desire for power. Obtaining power. Lock
Power. Is it really fine, though? We're not done. We're not even close to done. I'm just getting warmed up. What feels incomplete to me about the it's just fantasy argument is that Twilight is a fantasy, yes, but it's a fantasy that reflects something real about the sexual dynamics between men and women. I mostly agree with Nancy Friday's and Michael Bader's psychological analysis of fantasies, but psychology without material analysis of power fails to explain some important things. This becomes really obvious with sexual fantasies involving racial fetishism. For example, there's a chapter of Nancy Friday's book titled Big Black Men, which is exactly what it sounds like. The fantasies of white women who are turned on by an animalistic stereotype of black men. It's a racial fixation that's very much present as subtext in Twilight.
I leave you alone for 2 minutes, and the wolves descend.
Jacob is indigenous. He transforms into an animal. His last name is literally Black.
We were great spirit warriors that transformed to the powerful wolf.
Oh god, are the werewolves Lamanites? Stephanie, I regret to inform you that the cuck tent is racist. We could try to psychoanalyze all of this, the bigness in question referring not just to anatomy, but to the intensity of desire, the exciting taboo of otherness, animalization as a shame-negating device.
Interesting to think about that there's white women who have a sexual fantasy for black men, but it's more of like a power play where they're like the powerful white woman and they're with like what they see as an animalistic black man. Interesting power play there. And power definitely comes into sexuality for sure. I'd say it's one of the more finer expressions of power.
And all of that may be true, but aren't these fantasies still a reflection and possibly a reinforcement of unjust political reality? In his 2016 essay, Decolonizing My Desire, slave play author Jeremy O. Harris describes his experience as a black gay teenager who became erotically fixated on white men, because to him, whiteness represented power and prestige. He concludes that by obsessing over white bodies and white validation, quote, I was failing to exist. I don't see myself as some kind of moral judge of who's allowed to fantasize about what, but I've noticed people are usually way less comfortable with fantasies rooted in racism than they are with fantasies about powerful men dominating submissive women. But is that justifiable? Have men not dominated women throughout history? Stephanie Meyer didn't invent this story about a male predator and his female prey out of thin air. Don't a lot of girls grow up being treated as a kind of sexual prey to male predators? Doesn't that have some kind of influence on the fantasies that women have? And can't fantasy sometimes influence reality? According to criminologist Scott Bond, the behavioral science unit of the FBI has concluded that serial killers program themselves in childhood to become murderers through a progressively intensifying loop of fantasy. I can confirm this. My question is, are fantasy power dynamics simply the result of political inequality, or is there something inherently vampiric about sexuality itself? According to Leopold von Sacher-Masoch, the guy who masochism is named after, I wish I could have a perversion named after me. According to Masoch, in love, one person must be the hammer, the other, the anvil. Is this true? Is sexuality always ruled by hierarchy, split into binary roles? Is there always a hammer and an anvil, a top and a bottom, a dom and a sub, a lover and a beloved, a lion and a lamb?
What a stupid lamb. You sick, masochistic lion.
In heterosexuality, the default assumption is that the man is the lion and the woman is the lamb. But gay people are hardly exempt from aligning with these types of—
Oh, interesting, yes. Please talk about queer people in these tropes of dynamics, of power dynamics.
roles, top and bottom. Some people are born straight and others have straightness thrust upon them. Let's call the situation default heterosexual sadomasochism, DHSM. Remember this because I'm gonna say it a lot. DHSM, this division of sexuality into bipolar roles, masculine, feminine.
Oh yeah. See, this is so interesting. These sort of oppositions of power. Opposites. Yeah, really very let's keep listening. I'm gathering my thoughts.
Active passive, subject object, lover beloved, giving receiving, pursuing pursued, predator prey, dominant submissive, possessing possessed, conquering surrendering, penetrating penetrated, voyeuristic exhibitionistic, sadistic masochistic. In reality, none of these roles are interchangeable or even necessarily correlated. Being masculine does not imply being a top, and neither imply being dominant. Masculinity is gender expression, top is a sexual position, and dominant is a role in a power dynamic. But in DHSM, these roles are assumed to be bundled together and assumed to belong to the sexuality of men. When I say sadomasochism, I don't just mean the narrow sense of enjoying or inflicting pain, but this whole dynamic of dominance and submission. Male dominance is so much the heterosexual default that female dominance, or femdom, is usually considered a kink. That is, it's considered deviant.
Interesting. When men are dominant, that's considered normal. When women are dominant, that's considered a kink. It's considered deviant. But why should it be? Why? Because when you apply that to like queer couples, I mean, how does that power play come out?
DHSM defines heterosexuality as the dominance of women by men. Men who are perceived as submissive to women are sometimes called gay over such emasculating behavior as leaning towards a woman, pleasuring a woman, walking behind a woman, and holding the baby he sired with a woman. DHSM is woven into so much of our language about sexuality. Think about the implications of the term impotence, literally loss of power, implying that phallic sexuality is fundamentally about power. There's a strong association between masculinity and predation. Meat is considered masculine. A feminine man is called a soy boy. Edward Cullen is a vegetarian vampire. He's vegetarian because without a guilty conscience, he would be incapable of love. But it's important that he be a vampire because his bloodlust gives him his dangerous virile edge. I want my man to be a predator, not a cow, a lion, says a woman on Tinder who has traumatic experiences with vegans. Don't we all? Supposedly, men hunt while women gather. But in DHSM, women become the meat.
Just looks at you like you're something to eat.
In The Sexual Politics of Meat, vegan feminist Carol J. Adams argues for the interrelation of the oppression of women and the slaughter of animals. She wants to abolish both forms of cruelty from human life. God, you can't slaughter animals or objectify women? Well, what are men supposed to do for fun now? Women's bodies are discussed as flesh to be consumed, castles under siege, temples to be profaned. Her freshness seal is broken.
But that's never applied to the masculine side. Yeah, hetero power dynamics are just so fucking bizarre, honestly. Like, they should be ripped apart. Oh, hey, Mark. Good to see you. Thank you so much for this super chat. I appreciate that. Yeah, very odd. Anyways, yeah, very odd how, like, power dynamics don't work both ways. A lot of strange oppositions in the Holos. A lot of different ways, like, power can intertwine. And power intertwined with sexuality is, I think, something that humanity needs to study and look at more, honestly. That's why I appreciate this so much. Like, it's so fucking fascinating.
Becomes used goods. Smut made for men tends to involve degrading women. Likewise, erotic media for women tends to involve themes of submission and surrender. Feminine masochism pervades culture. Lana Del Rey says, "He hit me and it felt like a kiss. He hurt me, but it felt like true love." Sylvia Plath says, "Every woman adores a fascist." From an egalitarian feminist perspective, it's troubling, concerning, that not just in fantasy but in reality, sadomasochism often reflects the social, political, and sexual domination of women by men. Historically, psychoanalysis considered default heterosexual sadomasochism the result of biological predisposition. Freud says, "The sexuality of most male human beings contains an element of aggressiveness, a desire to subjugate."
Daddy, chill.
Freud's colleague Helena Deutsch argued likewise that, quote, "masochism is part of the woman's anatomical destiny." She thought that female masochism results from the inherent pain of women's reproductive role, defloration, menstruation, and childbirth. It's really just a secular version of the biblical view that women's destiny is pain and submission. "In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee." A lot of 20th century feminist theory was devoted to arguing against this idea of anatomical destiny. Feminists have tended to argue that male sadism and female masochism are purely the result of patriarchy, of male social dominance. The idea is that women learn to desire submission from their inferior social position, and men learn to desire dominating and degrading women from their superior position.
I mean, you almost think, like, by tradition, it's almost like bred into humanity. Like, it's almost like humanity, like, with the way social, like, the social construct is, it designs, yeah, it does. It designs men to be aggressive, and it designs women to be submissive. It breeds men to be in power and breeds women to be submissive. Something that definitely needs to change, and something that I think needs to be dismantled and destroyed and heavily examined.
In the 1980s, a common radical feminist view was that male and female are not natural categories at all, but that they're constructed through violence and exploitation, analogous to bourgeoisie and proletariat. Radical feminist Catherine McKinnon says, "Male and female are created through the erotization of dominance and submission. Man f***s woman. subject, verb, object. Andrea Dworkin says, men are distinguished from women by their commitment to do violence rather than to be victimized by it. Notice how at odds this is with J.K. Rowling's formulation, sex is real, which some radical feminists would once have considered the constitutive statement of sexism. There's been a return to anatomical destiny lately in the form of TERFism, that is, post-feminist conservative bigotry against trans people. Rowling's transphobic arguments often hinge on an assumption that males are natural predators and females are natural
It's
prey.
true.
Or as
Right. J.K. Rowling does heavily lead into that. She truly believes with every fiber of her being that there are no trans women, that it is simply just men trying to manipulate and get to women from a different angle. It's really quite sad, honestly, that she sees people like that she shows so trapped in this false dichotomy of like how men and women are naturally behave.
alien sex inspector Maya Forstater puts it, in the context of prisons, it is a hole that matters. Women have a hole which men want to penetrate. Bluntly, the reason we have men in women's prisons is to keep the men away from the holes. This is anatomical.
Okay, so that's in reference to men and women's prisons, and if you send a trans woman to a woman's prison, then her fear is like, well, they might have a wiener, and then therefore they'll rape the women, and which is just, I don't know. And then just say that like it just has a peg and it just wants to go into the hole. How the fuck? What? Like, children think more in-depth thoughts about that sort of stuff than that lady. And these people are like at the top of TERFism and leading people down this like fascist sort of like scare campaign.
Destiny at the kindergarten level. Woman equals whole, man equals pole. Therefore, man equals predator, woman equals prey.
I like the pole and the hole.
TERFs think the Omega-verse is real, that men are anatomical alphas and women are anatomical omegas. Stephanie Meyer takes a more gender-fluid view. In the introduction,
okay, I hope you feel better, Shadow Dragon. I'm so sorry you have COVID. Please get some rest. Please drink fluids. Please get some rest and take care of yourself.
to Femdom Twilight, Life and Death, Stephanie says, I've always maintained that it would have made no difference if the human were male and the vampire female. It's still the same story. And are there not male masochists and female sadists? Masochism is named after a man who once said, nothing kindles my passion quite so much as tyranny, cruelty, and above all unfaithfulness in a beautiful woman. Send him to the cuck tent. Send him to the tent of cuckoldry. Even if there is an anatomical disposition of men to sadism and women to masochism, disposition is not destiny. Both men and women are anatomically capable of being the hammer or the anvil, the predator or the prey. So I think that feminists are mostly correct to point to the history of male social dominance as the reason for default gendered roles. Until the Married Women's Property Act of 1870, English women were subject to a system called coverture, meaning that when a woman married, her entire legal existence was subsumed under that of her husband, and she effectively lost the right to own property or make contracts. In the US, it was only as recently as 1974 that women won the right to open independent bank accounts. The same year they started having sexual fantasies. Amazing. So historically, the erotic and economic fates of women have been fused. It's the key to historical romance novels like Pride and Prejudice, where the tension is between Elizabeth's desire for a marriage of love and her economic need for a marriage of security. Incels like to complain about female hypergamy, and Mr. Bennett sits around making sarcastic quips about it. That's right, we're coming from Mr. Bennett in this video. Nothing is sacred. But women's preference for wealthy, powerful partners is the result of gender roles that make women dependent and subservient. Women.
Yeah, true. Okay, folks, we've been at this for 3 hours, and we still have like a whole, like most of a half of this video left. I think I'm going to call it, and I think what's going to happen is nothing's going on tomorrow. It's Saturday. I don't think Neogenian Oculus is not going to stream tomorrow. So I think I'm going to do the second half of this tomorrow. We'll have an extra stream tomorrow. And if we do have a little time, if we finish this, maybe we'll watch some, I don't know, something else. We'll catch up on other things. So how about that, friends? We're gonna do another stream tomorrow. How about that? A little extra stream. A little extra streamy stream. A little extra stream. Which I've never done, honestly. I don't think in the history of live streaming on Fridays, I don't think we've had to like go for Saturday. So tomorrow I will be going live around 5 p.m. Pacific time, my time. Today we started at like 4:30, 5 o'clock, so around the same time. So the same time tomorrow. Same time tomorrow. Let's get back together and finish this. It is a very good subject, and I'm like, there's still so much to say, like with Neogenian parallels, and the fact that she's getting into like power dynamics with sexuality, like it's just so fucking fascinating, and it's such a deep dive into the shadow of humanity and to the deep archetypes of humanity and the stories of humanity. Like this is just very rich, a lot to take in. But yeah, I was just like, I'm like, dang, it's already been like 3 hours of streaming, almost 3.5 now. I'm like, this is gonna, and I knew this would take a long time too. In fact, I was even hesitant to do this because I'm like, this is such a long show, but it's so educational and so good. So please join me tomorrow. Let's finish this tomorrow, okay? We'll go live again tomorrow, same time. Yeah? Does it sound good? And I'll save this spot. We'll end it. I probably should have ended it like right at the beginning of the chapter. And maybe we'll backtrack a little bit tomorrow just so we can get our bearings again. But I would love it if you all join me tomorrow for another stream. Yeah. Sounds good. Elise says, also, if there's time, there was a good discussion on this Jungian life about Jung and his take on homosexuality. Yeah, totally. Yeah, if we finish the tomorrow's half and we still want to stream a little bit more, we can look at something else. For sure. So, I'm glad I did this. Yeah, it's a little weird doing a two-parter stream, but this will work out. Maybe we'll do more Saturday streams in the future. If the Neogenian Oculus isn't going live, you know, maybe we can do extra streams if we're feeling it. So I also want to rearrange my room tomorrow. I am. So tomorrow you're going to see a whole new background behind you. Let's do it. Totally worth the content. All right, my lovelies. It's so good to see you. And I will see you tomorrow, okay? Have a good night. Sleep well. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time, okay, my friends? All right? All right. Good night, everybody. Take care. Get some rest. Get some rest. Good night. And thank you so much, Elise, for coming and moderating. I forgot to thank you last week. I'm so sorry. But thank you for coming and moderating. Cassie, thank you for moderating. I know Mark popped in and Philip popped in. Thank you so much. And thank you all for the super chats and gifting memberships and all that thing. It's truly wonderful. I love you all. And I'm actually excited to do another stream tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to it. So let's do it. All right. Good night, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. All right. Bye.